Chapter 581 Tasha vs. Electric Eel Part 2. The electric eel widened his eyes, realizing that Tasha had one more power to kill him. Tasha squinted her eyes and released her killing intent. Her expression was solemn and her tone was cold. I may not have the power to kill you earlier. However, this time is different. The sphere that compressed the lightning floated on top of her hand. She poured a bit of her magic power and reshaped the sphere, turning it into an arrow. Aiming at the electric eel, she took a deep breath and pulled her bow. How about you taste your own power? She released the arrow like that of a bullet. Seeing such a power, the electric eel didn't dare to swallow it anymore. Instead, he began to flee, avoiding the arrow. Tasha, knowing that the enemy wouldn't dare to face that arrow, controlled it by giving additional lightning. It was her lightning. And that same lightning sparked, giving enough boost to change the direction of the arrow. The electric eel couldn't believe his eyes, because he had just seen the arrow turning in his direction. The arrow ultimately hit his tail and dissolved, releasing all that compressed lightning. With his lightning becoming the one that fueled the arrow, the blast created from the explosion was much greater than Tasha's lightning arrow. Boom! Ah! The electric eel screamed in pain, never expecting to find Tasha to use his own attack to injure him. However, what shocked her the most was Rapaka. Rapaka was his biggest miscalculation. No one could ever predict that in his last breath, Rapaka reached Tasha and sealed his own element in Tasha's body. With this, Kai no longer needed to return her sealing magic, as they could now both use it together. Kai might not be able to use the sealing magic properly because he lacked the element, but Tasha could utilize Rapaka's, allowing her to regain her superiority in this battle. And that explosion created from her compressed lightning blew the eel's tail away. The tail flew several hundred meters into the water as the electric eel kept wailing in pain. Blood began to flow out and dropped to the ground as if raining. The electric eel used all his power to seal his injured part, stopping the bleeding. Controlling such a thing required a huge amount of focus, so Tasha knew it was her chance to defeat him. Now that our situation is reversed, why don't you talk more? Tasha smiled while raising her hand. A pink sphere appeared on top of her head, drawing all the air around before compressing it. She also created another one and shot her lightning inside. With this, she had 2 arrows. She pulled the bow again and planned to shoot both arrows at the same time. You don't want to talk big again? Come on. Tasha looked down on him now, inciting his anger. As she expected, the eel couldn't contain his anger and shouted, "Don't think you already won. I am far stronger than you think." The eel's body began to release lightning as the eel opened his mouth, gathering all the lightning inside his mouth. Great. Tasha knew the eel wanted a showdown. When the eel shot out a lightning beam, Tasha sneakily tweaked her finger and hid the compressed air arrow under her hand and released the lightning arrow first. Because of the trail left behind his attack, the eel didn't realize the fact Tasha only used 1 arrow at a time. He simply saw his lightning beam stop for a few seconds, indicating that it hit the arrow. The clash created a continuous shockwave. However, both of their eyes remained calm, as if they expected their own attacks to win this clash. The answer came so suddenly. The lightning beam shrank in size but kept going to Tasha. Tasha lost. Ha ha ha, this is the difference between our power. The eel laughed. Little did he know, Tasha never planned to win this clash. Right before the lightning hit him, Tasha used her teleportation magic and sent her above the eel. Yeah! How about you try this? The eel heard her voice and sensed her presence, raising his head. What? He was dumbfounded when he saw another arrow on her hand, and it seemed to be a compressed arrow that contained a powerful attack. How can there be an arrow in your hand? You haven't made any other arrow yet. Wait. He suddenly came to a realization and gasped. You didn't shoot the other one. Tasha smiled and released her arrow. Correct. This is your prize. Shh. The eel gritted its teeth and flapped its body to move away, but the arrow had already hit him. He managed to cover his body with lightning, but the sphere exploded, releasing a huge volume of air. The air created a gush of wind that knocked him down. Ha! The eel screamed as blood flowed out of his mouth. The wind launched him down diagonally, so he crashed to the ground. Bam! The pain jolted his mind. Even though he only had one bone in the middle of his body, he still felt it crack upon impact. Gah! Never in his wildest dream would he think he would be defeated like this, especially against someone who just managed to get her power. All the unwillingness that crept into his mind forced him to be awake and release all his magic power. The lightning sparked and cracked the ground as the eel body kept moving to show Tasha he could still fight. After getting the feeling back, the eel hit the ground with his head, launching him into the air. After that, he used his magic power to stay afloat, glaring at Tasha. Unfortunately, Tasha also didn't wait for him to recover like how he attacked her in the middle of receiving her inheritance. She had compressed 7 spheres and turned them into arrows. My teacher has 7 spheres that can defeat his enemy, and these 7 arrows shall become the proof of the connection between me and my teacher. All the arrows then hovered around her body. They had been loaded by compressed air, so it would create enough force to knock the eel down. With a cold expression, Tasha shot 1 arrow at a time. The arrow hit the eel that just got back up in the air. The gust of wind pushed him down to the ground again. The next arrow then came and deepened the crater. Bam, 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 bam. Tasha rained him with 6 arrows in succession, beating his body. The eel had been screaming non-stop, enduring all the pain from those air explosions. Tasha only had 7 arrows, so as long as he endured 1 more arrow, he could use that chance to escape. That thought kept him awake this whole time, waiting for his chance. Unfortunately, when the 7th arrow hit him, it specifically touched his head, and that arrow wasn't a compressed air. Instead, Tasha poured her lightning into that arrow, so the lightning would create a huge spark that directly hit his brain. Ugh! The eel was electrocuted by the lightning, as he felt his brain was fried. Tasha couldn't confirm whether he had died or not, so she quickly showered him with more arrows until 30 holes appeared all over his body. Chapter 582, Felice vs. Sea Lion Part 1. Felice was eager to show her newfound power. She wanted everyone to see that she wasn't someone useless like back then. In front of her was a sea lion. The body was big, weighing around several hundred kilograms. Felice took a deep breath and considered her magic, trying to find the way to win in this battle. After all, her enemy was among the top 10. Although the sea lion was a new member among the top 10 to replace the 2 brothers killed by Kai and Ishii, the sea lion was still out of his reach. Hence, there was only one way to defeat such a monster. Showing something unexpected and taking advantage of it, Felice muttered inwardly as she raised both hands. Her body began to float several centimeters from the ground while staring at the sea lion. As if responding to her action, the sea lion used both hands or fins to hit the ground. Ha! Suddenly, 2 walls appeared next to her, planning to crush her. As soon as they moved, Felice raised both her hands and pointed her palms toward them. Ha! Using her telekinesis, she released a huge amount of pressure like what Ishii did back then. She was mesmerized by the strength that could crush one's enemy with a single wave of her hand. So she sought the true power like this. The overwhelming pressure pushed both walls together and stopped its movement. The sea lion obviously didn't want to embarrass himself for losing this type of battle. He poured more magic power to summon a few more walls behind those 2 walls, reinforcing the original wall and increasing its strength. Felice widened her eyes when she noticed the walls were moving forward. Gritting her teeth, Felice released more magic power and focused on a certain spot. Crack. Suddenly, a huge crack appeared in the middle of both walls, showing them her plan had succeeded. In the instant, the sea lion was surprised. Felice released an even stronger pressure and thoroughly shattered the walls into pieces. What? The sea lion was amazed by Felice's strength, not knowing that she used more magic power than him. Felice remained silent and checked her condition, thinking, this won't do. My magic power won't be enough to handle a monster like him, so what should I do? While thinking about her plan, Felice rose to the sky and waved her hands down. Pressure release. The telekinesis gathered the wind and turned them into a wall that kept blowing the wind down. This created a stronger pressure than the one she used to shatter the walls. It was also a similar technique to what Ishii showed her. However, Ishii had almost an infinite amount of magic power due to the crown jewel, so she wouldn't be able to maintain this for long. Still, the power was extraordinary because the pressure she created pinned the sea lion to the ground, The weight cracked the dirt and turned it into a crater. Bam! This. The sea lion gritted his teeth and tried to escape. Mountain wall. The dirt next to him emerged. Because the crater had the inclination, it forced the two walls to collide, creating a triangle-shaped home like that of a roof. This roof stopped the pressure for a second before it disappeared, but the sea lion managed to use that time to summon another attack. Sand. Felice felt the fluctuation of the magic power from beneath her feet. The dirt turned into sand that seemed to be sucking everything inside. The sand pool was 6 feet in diameter, enough to swallow Felice if her feet touched the ground. Luckily, Felice was 10 meters above the ground, allowing her to escape the worst. However, the sea lion obviously didn't like it because several boulders of similar size as the sea lion flew into the air like a cannonball. Felice widened her eyes and used her telekinesis to repel them to the sides, albeit it was futile. The boulder's momentum was beyond her imagination, creating a force stronger than the counterforce from her telekinesis. When she pushed them to the side, they barely flew to the side and almost hit her in the process. On top of that, there were multiple rocks that were about to hit her. Tiesk. Felice clicked her tongue and tried to fly up, avoiding all these attacks. The sea lion had expected her movement since there were only 2 directions to escape, above or below. Since Felice chose the former, a huge wall emerged from the ground and snapped in half, falling on top of her. Seriously? Felice gasped and used her telekinesis to push back. But the wall seemed to be heavier than she thought. This is not a normal rock. Felice gritted her teeth, looking at the rock that had turned into a blue-colored rock. What's this rock? Its density should be far heavier than dirt. She also noticed the incoming rocks from all directions. Having no choice, Felice retracted her telekinesis and fell to the ground, avoiding all those rocks. The rocks from below kept coming to her, so she had no choice other than to keep going down until she landed on the ground. But she hesitated at the last second, because the ground had the living sand that would suck her inside. Knowing that she couldn't escape, Felice poured all her magic power and used her telekinesis to push in all directions. However, there was one direction that contained more power than the others. It was her back. That last effort allowed her to repel the stone on her back while she raised both hands. 2 huge gauntlets appeared on her hand and blocked all the tree's boulders. The momentum knocked her back, but she wasn't injured. As soon as Felice landed on the ground, she took a deep breath and looked at the sea lion's expression. There was only one response from her. I need to punch that face. Looking at the huge blue and white gauntlets, Felice chose to abandon her telekinesis for a bit. Seeing the sea lion still continuing to fire the boulders, Felice looked around to find an opening. Suddenly, she leaped to the left and used her telekinesis to boost her speed, like how Kai utilized his improved sound blast. She slipped through the boulders and changed directions to the sea lion, using her speed. You want to have a go? The sea lion smirked and raised both fins as if he wanted to do some punching. Felice raised her right fist and covered it with her telekinesis. This was the technique she had learned and improved herself in her training. The moment they came face to face, they sent a punch straight to each other. The 2 hands collided and produced a shockwave that cracked the ground beneath them. However, the sea lion wasn't pushed back. He even had the time to laugh. Haha, are you sure you have eaten this morning? You are too weak. I heard Kai Carter has taken a disciple. I wonder where she is. Hearing such a taunt, Felice gritted her teeth, remembering all the hardships she had endured in the past year. I am Kai Carter's student. Felice shouted and showed such an energetic expression for the first time. The membrane that trapped all her telekinesis energy suddenly dissipated, releasing a huge amount of pressure from her fist. What? The sea lion was shocked by this sudden power as the blow pushed him several meters back. With his strength and body weight, it was close to impossible to do that unless you had a powerful attack. He raised his vision and looked at Felice with a dumbfounded expression. She might be panting as if she was tired, but this just showed her potential, considering Felice started her training at the latest. Chapter 503, Felice vs. Sea Lion, Part 2. I'm Kai Carter's student. Felice dissolved her telekinesis that surrounded her fist, releasing a pressure like no other. In that instant, the sea lion felt as if a giant boulder had just struck his hand. The sea lion widened his eyes, never expecting this kind of power from Felice. He gritted his teeth and pushed several meters back. Luckily, he managed to withstand that kind of punch. If not, he would be an embarrassment. He raised his hand and covered his fins with rocks that came out of the ground, creating a stone arm, the size of Felice's metal arms. He flapped his tail and launched his big body to Felice, sending a punch. Whether you are his student or not, it doesn't matter. What matters the most is your strength. The sea lion punched her. Felice struck his fist with the same technique, and the two powers collided. However, the conclusion came so suddenly. Felice's telekinesis broke first, and the pressure was dispersed to all directions. The sea lion's stone hand hit Felice's metal hand and cracked the front. Gah! Felice widened his eyes while gasping. The splinters from her metal arms grazed her fingers inside. Blood began to flow out of the wounds, and Felice decided to jump back, regaining some distances. She raised her hand and checked the condition of her metal hand. The front area seemed to be crushed, making it unusable. Felice furrowed her eyebrows and deactivated the right hand. She didn't know whether her normal hand would be strong enough to handle that kind of punch or not. Her bones might even get crushed. Ha ha, you are useless. You won't be able to win against me. The sea lion laughed, mocking Felice's power. Felice clicked her tongue and stomped the ground, cracking the ground. After that, she raised her hands, and several giant boulders were lifted up from the ground, floating in front of her. Aiming at the sea lion, she shot all of them in succession. The sea lion harumphed and hit the ground with his left fin. Spikes soon came out and skewed the boulders, stopping all of them. Not enough. You won't be able to defeat me. The sea lion kept mocking her, showing their difference in strength. Felice, not wanting to lose, jumped forward while avoiding all the boulders. Even the sea lion was startled when he realized Felice was using the boulders to be her covers, making it hard for him to determine where Felice was. No, this is not enough. The sea lion flapped its tail and lifted up the entire chunk of dirt along with all the boulders and spikes, which should raise Felice to the air. However, Felice surprisingly appeared next to him. What? The sea lion widened his eyes and came to a realization. You always stayed on the farthest rock. Although Felice didn't respond, the answer was obvious. By using the farthest rock, she could avoid his attack and used it as the biggest cover to sneak around him. I already said I am Kaikata's student. Felice snorted and punched him in the face. The sea lion flew to the side because of the telekinesis force and rolled a few times on the ground. Felice didn't want to let the sea lion recover, so she created a few more boulders to smash him. She was always proud whenever she said she was Kaikata's student. This title carried a huge burden on her shoulder. At the same time, it also proved that she was the one who Kaikata recognized. There was no way she would be ordinary. Unfortunately, her lack of experience became the one thing that restrained her from becoming stronger than this, and the sea lion used her lack of experience at this moment. Chains made of dirt emerged from the ground, circling around her wrists and ankles. Felice gasped and saw the sea lion already standing. You faked it. Felice just realized the fact the sea lion acted like he was injured after that punch. She noticed the rock around his right cheek that seemed to be the one blocking her punch earlier. Everything was just to chain her down in this place. Since you are so proud of becoming his disciple, I will see whether you are strong enough to keep that title or not. The sea lion smirked and jumped forward, sending his fist that had been covered with stone. Not good. If I take this, I will. Felice gritted her teeth, seeing the sea lion that kept coming closer. Telekinesis. Felice released all her power and used her telekinesis to shatter the ground and the chains. Bam! The telekinesis created a crater beneath her and shattered the chains into pieces. Unfortunately, the sea lion had already arrived in front of her and was about to hit her stomach. No. She quickly used her telekinesis to launch the sea lion away, but his big body was too heavy for her. She might be able to lift a huge building, weighing a few tons. However, the sea lion had utilized his own magic power to repel her telekinesis, making it hard for her to lift him up. That was why she decided to fight him in close combat. Unfortunately, this was her mistake, because the sea lion managed to trick her into this situation. Sorry, master. Felice closed her eyes. Before feeling any impact, a woman's voice echoed in her ears, saying, "Before apologizing to him, you should stay alive first. He surely wants to hear your voice." Felice and the sea lion's bodies shook as they instinctively turned to the side, finding Dark Michelle coming with her scythes. Dark Michelle waved her swords and released 2 shadow slashes. "Shadow slash! Not good!" The sea lion widened his eyes in shock and quickly stopped his movement. He wanted to avoid it by jumping to the side. However, one of Dark Michelle's shadow slashes hit the fin that was about to hit Felice. The shadow slash circled around the stone hand and cut through it until the fin fell to the ground. "Ah!" The sea lion screamed in pain while looking at the cut fin. The blood flowed out of his fin and fell to the ground. Not wanting to get any more attacks, the sea lion regained his distance and glared at Dark Michelle, who came to the rescue. "I have come!" Dark Michelle smiled at Felice. "You are?" Felice widened her eyes as this was the first time she saw Dark Michelle. "I am Michelle as well. Just don't care about my appearance." Dark Michelle gave a thumbs up. "If you want, you can even call me Master's wife." Felice's body shook and made a weird smile. Why are you hesitating? Am I that suspicious?" Dark Michelle pouted while looking away. "That's not it." Felice denied it and explained, "I believe it can be solved after this war." Fine. I will let you go for now." Dark Michelle sighed and pointed at the sea lion. "We need to kill that bastard before I lose all my magic power. Do you have any idea?" Felice furrowed her eyebrows and gulped down. "I actually have an idea." "Good." Dark Michelle nodded in satisfaction while bending her knees, asking her to whisper it to her ears. Felice told her a few things that put a smile on Dark Michelle's face. "We absolutely need to do that." Chapter 584. Felice versus Sea Lion. Part 3. As soon as they got the plan, Dark Michelle said, "I'm going to handle him. You can handle the rest. Don't worry, I will be fine." Felice hesitated for a second, but chose to trust Dark Michelle. After all, she was made of magic power, not a real person. "I understand. Please be careful." "Okay." She smiled and ran forward, heading straight to the sea lion whose fin was cut by her. The sea lion tried to stop the bleeding while hitting the ground with his other fin, trying to stop Dark Michelle. Suddenly, the ground rose, lifting her up. Dark Michelle casually planted her sides on the ground, making sure she wasn't launched the moment the ground stopped. As she expected, she carried the momentum after the ground reached its peak. Luckily, the scythes acted as her anchor and tied her to the ground. After that, she climbed down the tall spike with her scythes, as if she was a spider, and leaped toward the sea lion when she was close enough. The sea lion realized Dark Michelle had more experience in battle. He would be at a disadvantage if he continued fighting this battle, so he aimed at Felice instead. Launch. The sea lion summoned multiple boulders and shot them into the air. The boulders made a parabolic trail and landed in front of Felice. However, that kind of speed was something Felice could handle. She used her telekinesis to fly. Instead of coming over, Felice relied on Dark Michelle to stop the sea lion and move to a different place. "Are you going to flee?" the sea lion shouted, trying to stop her. Dark Michelle appeared between them and waved her sword, Shadow Slash. The sea lion instinctively leaped back to avoid it. "Oi! Oi!" Dark Michelle made a huge smirk while looking down at the sea lion. "You are so proud when fighting that kid. Now that you fight me, you are scared? Idiot." The sea lion gritted his teeth and summoned more rocks in his surroundings. "I am not afraid of you." Like Rapaka, the sea lion covered his body with stones to withstand Dark Michelle's Shadow Slash. Although her attack would still cut him, he could let go of the rock to avoid getting sliced. This was a perfect countermeasure against Dark Michelle's Shadow Slash, or that was what he thought. Suddenly, Dark Michelle jumped toward him and waved her sword down. This time, she didn't use anything special, avoiding using too much magic power from Michelle's depleted magic reserve. That was also why she didn't release all 8 Shadow Slashes earlier, even though she could kill him with that attack. Michelle, after all, needed that magic power to change the battlefield. Thinking about it, Dark Michelle tested the toughness of the rocks. Clink. As she would expect from an opponent this level, her sword wasn't good enough to cut the rock. The sea lion used that chance to hit Dark Michelle on the stomach, only to be blocked by all sides. "Let's see if I can cut this or not." Dark Michelle smiled and kept waving her swords one after another, striking at the same spot. Meanwhile, the sea lion half parried her sword and half attacked her. Every time he parried her, Dark Michelle would hit a different place, as if trying to change her attack pattern. And when he was about to attack her, his movement would be stopped by her scythes. They kept clashing against each other for 30 seconds, showing their own superiority. Unfortunately, none of them managed to graze each other. Where are your powerful attacks? You're not going to use it anymore? The sea lion made a smug smile, looking at Dark Michelle with contempt. The latter simply shook her head and corrected him. It's not that I am not using it. I simply don't need to use that fancy attack to defeat you. You're too proud, woman. Dark Michelle shrugged. Fine, I'm going to correct my words. The sea lion was surprised to hear those words, but he soon understood the weight of her correction. I won't be the one who kills you, it's the kid. Dark Michelle suddenly jumped backward while pointing her middle finger at him. Die, sucker. The sea lion's body shook as he instinctively raised his head, finding Nella floating with a 4-story tall building. There was nothing unique about this building other than the pointed tip. Nella rotated the building and let the tip fall first, creating a huge blade to kill the sea lion. No. The sea lion raised the ground again to protect him. However, the building and the ground destroyed each other, and dust covered the entire area, making them unable to see what was going on. The loud rumbling sound soon stopped as the clash ended. Felice hurriedly used her telekinesis to blow away the smoke so she could see the sea lion's condition. To her surprise, the sea lion was still standing without any additional wounds. Felice opened her eyes wide, shocked by the revelation. Next to the sea lion stood several tall pillars that protected him. He might be surrounded by rubbles, but none of them seemed to touch him. Felice clenched her hands. The sea lion noticed Felice's expression and laughed. Haha, did you expect that kind of building to kill me? He looked so proud to the point Dark Michelle approached him with her swords. Then, I am going to kill you myself. The sea lion harumphed and lifted her again to the air, buying time to collect himself. After that, the sea lion tried to launch the rubbles like machine guns. However, Felice also moved as if she wanted to fix her own mistake. She wished to kill him to show the world she was worthy as Kai's disciple. It's useless, you little brat. The sea lion laughed while shooting some of the rubbles to Dark Michelle, hindering her. When Felice was about to reach him, she suddenly halted her steps, as if she hesitated at the last moment. Huh? The sea lion was confused for a second and mocked her again. You finally realized how weak you are compared to me? No. Felice shook her head. I realize how idiotic you are compared to me. What did you say? The sea lion gritted her teeth before realizing her true plan. He turned around and saw Dark Michelle coming after him. He raised his fin to shoot more rubbles, but Felice used her telekinesis to push them down, preventing any rubble from flying. This was the first trap Felice made in order to make the sea lion focus on the rubble instead of the ground like he used to. However, he soon noticed it and lifted the ground instead, creating a wall. Unfortunately for him, he just fell on Felice's second trap. He was too focused on Dark Michelle, allowing her to approach him. What? The sea lion widened his eyes in surprise and lifted the ground around him to turn them into his armor. Felice shouldn't have enough strength to break the armor, unless that armor was never worn. The sea lion suddenly felt something jolted his mind, numbing his body. It even stopped all kinds of actions from him, allowing Felice to arrive before him with her last metal arm in front of his face. What is happening? The sea lion was dumbstruck, not understanding what had happened to his body. Felice smiled at him. The world's strongest anesthetic, made by the world's greatest poison master. Can't you see I am just buying time for it to work? When? Before he finished, Felice punched his head with all her power as the telekinesis strengthened her attack, disfiguring the sea lion's face in an instant. He was blown away and landed on the ground. Unable to move his body, the sea lion suddenly remembered something. The building. Felice already appeared before him, planning to smash his head. Yeah, that building wasn't meant to kill you. It was the hidden place of anesthetic. The gas that can render you sea monsters useless. It's time for you to die. Felice released all her strength and hit the sea lion's head a couple of times until she crushed him. She didn't hold back at all and released all the frustration pent up inside her mind. All those mockeries went back to him as the sea lion finally died under Felice's hand. "Eh," Felice panted and raised her head, shouting on top of her lung. "I'm Kai Carter's student." Dark Michelle watched her from the side and smiled. "I already said she was the one who would kill you." She closed her eyes and disappeared. Chapter 585, Sophia vs. Stingray, Part 1. Just like the others, Sophia fought against her enemy, which turned out to be the stingray. This was the first time she had fought against someone like this. However, considering she had received training from Amulda Kalan the longest, she took pride in being one of the strongest among Kai's women, and often compared herself to Michelle. She looked at the stingray that had a white bottom and black skin on top. The stingray didn't underestimate his opponents like the others. He knew Sophia was among the strongest, so he quickly descended from the sky, challenging Sophia in the ground. The moment he flapped his two fins, the dust kicked up into the air. A magic circle appeared behind Sophia as she placed her hand on the ground. "Freeze!" The ice began to spread from her hands to a fan-shaped area in front of her. The moment the ice reached the dust, it began to freeze the cloud of dust. To her surprise, the stingray only needed to flap his tail to break the ice apart, returning the dust to normal. Sophia's expression turned grim when she saw this power. The stingray seemed to be prepared to fight her, making this fight more dangerous. "I acknowledge your power, but it doesn't mean I have the intention of losing." The stingray surprisingly raised the ground next to him and shaped it into a drill. With a single wave of his hand, the drill flew to Sophia like that of a bullet, forcing Sophia to dodge instead of taking it head-on. Not wanting to lose against him, another magic circle appeared before her eyes as a dragon emerged from the circle. The stingray controlled the movement of the dust and covered the dragon. The dust began to crack the ice and soon shattered it into pieces. Sophia had another plan for the dust as she raised her hand. Fall. A huge magic circle, spanning over 10 meters in radius, appeared above the sky. The stingray widened his eyes and looked up. He tried to surround the ice boulder with his dust and broke it into pieces, but the moment he did it, the ice pieces fell on top of him, hitting him in the process. At the same time, Sophia summoned 2 more boulders of the same size. "How about you take it again?" Sophia smiled confidently. There were only 2 choices for the stingray. First, he destroyed the ice boulder. However, due to the gravity, he would end up getting hit by the ice, so it wasn't a good decision. His skin might be sturdier than normal magical beasts, but Sophia's ice seemed to be able to freeze that layer of skin, making it more vulnerable to the shock. He was afraid he would be injured by underestimating those ice shards. The same applied to everyone else. Michelle and the others had trained so much that their skills could no longer be compared to the past. They had finally managed to find a way to injure the enemy in their own unique way. This power rendered their tough skin useless, forcing the stingray to choose the second option. He jumped into the air and flew to the side, avoiding the boulders entirely. "You don't dare to withstand my ice?" Sophia looked down on him, openly mocking him. Surprisingly, the stingray chuckled and replied with a calm tone, "There's nothing wrong with me avoiding an attack." The statement shut Sophia's mouth as she realized the stingray was stronger than she expected. Unlike the others, the stingray didn't mind the mockeries, making him extremely dangerous. Instead of getting fixated over his pride, he is the type who will use all methods available to defeat his opponent. Sophia squinted her eyes, contemplating her plan. Because of his calm nature, Sophia changed her strategy to match his personality. However, Sophia also muttered inwardly, "This is going to be extremely dangerous for me. I'm afraid I can't escape this battle unscathed." Instead of relying on power, Sophia focused on speed and penetrating power. She placed her hand on the ground and froze it. Suddenly, 3 circular platforms rose from the ground as Sophia summoned 3 huge javelins on top of them. The javelin reached as far as 10 meters and had sharp edges. "Don't think your dust can destroy this fast enough," Sophia shouted and launched them to the stingray. The latter simply smiled and controlled the dust that had been covering him this whole time. The dust created a small tornado, becoming a kind of tunnel for the javelins. With this, the stingray had more time in dissolving the javelins. His strategy succeeded when the javelins shattered into pieces inside the dust. There was still quite a distance between them. So this scene was enough to make Sophia understand the stingray's power. "Young lady, it's my utmost honor to fight you." The stingray smiled and maintained his calm manner. Sophia's expression was distorted as she hurriedly formed a huge ice cage, throwing it to him. The stingray caught the cage with his dust, but he soon realized Sophia's intention. The ice cage had an unusual form that made the dust shatter the wrong pieces, letting some of them fly past them and hitting the stingray. The moment they hit the stingray, the ice spread on the spot. "Kuh!" The stingray closed his eyes in pain as he somehow felt as if a fire burned him, an ice that can burn dry ice. Sophia smiled and looked at him. "Since you don't underestimate me, I can only do my best to defeat you. No matter what method I need to use, I won't hesitate to use it in order to kill you." The stingray was surprised by Sophia's resolution and acknowledged her as his arch enemy. "I understand. Let's fight until only one of us remains standing." The stingray dove down, carrying all the dust with him. Sophia placed her hand on the ground and spread the ice all over the dirt. When he reached the land to make a swift swipe against Sophia, two huge wave-shaped ice emerged from the ice layer on the ground. Just like her dragon, the ice wave moved like an ocean wave and engulfed everything between it. The stingray felt a few stings on his body due to touching the ice, but he managed to force himself through it by turning the cloud of dust into a tornado, allowing him to increase his speed. He arrived in front of Sophia and tried to hit her with his right fin. "Not good!" Sophia raised her hands and covered them with dry ice. However, she didn't have the fundamental strength that allowed her to go against this kind of sweep. The moment the fin hit her, the dry ice shattered, and the fin launched her a few meters away. She rolled a few times on the ground and struggled to get up. At the same time, the stingray had several red marks on his body due to the blazing dry ice, including the part of his fin that hit Sophia. He flew into the air and prepared for the second charge to hit her. Meanwhile, Sophia had used her hands as her support and rose from the ground, staring at the stingray with blood flowing out of her mouth. Their eyes intertwined as they recognized each other's strength, and their real battle was about to begin. Chapter 586, Sophia vs. Stingray Part 2. Ice Dragon. Sophia summoned another dragon's head. The stingray created a small tornado to engulf the dragon's head. A smile appeared on Sophia's face as soon as the dragon's head was covered with dust. She raised two fingers and poured more magic power. Splash! The stingray realized it was a trap, but it was too late. Suddenly, the dragon's head exploded, creating a series of ice winds. The burst produced an icy shockwave that blew the dust away while freezing them. The stingray would face some problems to save them, so she thought this was the best she could do. The dust was dispersed and frozen, making it unusable. Using this chance, Sophia leaped forward while summoning a magic circle. The stingray flapped its fins and created several spikes from the ground in order to stop Sophia. Sophia effortlessly avoided it by jumping into the air. The stingray thought he managed to catch her because he summoned a few more pillars that were going to skewer her. Unfortunately for him, Sophia already expected something like this. There was a trail of ice on her boots as it connected her to the ground. This was the magic she used back when she traveled from a building to the ground by sliding in a small ice trail she created. Instead of creating it first, Sophia managed to create the ice trail together with her movement. And this magic allowed her to catch the stingray off guard because she suddenly stopped and stumbled as if she was going to fall. The ice trail had stopped expanding and pulled her down. Sophia used this force to launch herself to the ground and avoided the pillars. Of course, she intentionally landed on the area without spikes and closed the gap between them. The stingray widened his eyes in shock and tried to launch himself into the air, but Sophia had already arrived before him, waving her hand. Ice shock. The magic circle created an icy shock wave that made one feel a burning sensation just by touching it, and the stingray had half of his body sprayed with such a cold breeze. He couldn't help but wail in pain. Arg! Sophia wanted to launch another attack, but the stingray managed to pull himself together and escaped into the air while enduring all that pain. Only when he was in the air did he gather the remaining dust to destroy the frostbite on his body. Sophia clicked her tongue. I can't kill you that easily, huh? The stingray flapped his fins to summon a few more giant pillars, but Sophia hurriedly sealed all the frozen dust under a layer of ice. After that, Sophia waved her hand and generated an icy wind to freeze the sea. The stingray obviously didn't allow her to do it, and confronted her by using his remaining dust. Because of the amount of dust, he maintained a certain distance with her and dispersed all her wind. The stingray then summoned a few more spikes to kill her, but Sophia increased the depth of her eyes to prevent it from coming out of the ground. They expended their magic power without care. The dispersed dust destroyed the ice while the ice kept spreading until people could see two different sides standing side by side. "You won't last long, young lady." The stingray squinted his eyes, wondering what her intention was. He obviously had enough magic power to withstand this power all day, so Sophia must be plotting something. Suddenly, he looked up and realized what she wanted to do. She wanted to decrease the air above them to lower the temperature of the surrounding area. If she completed this, she would be able to use her power more efficiently. "No, you're not going to do this." The stingray hurriedly poured all his power to the icy wind, overpowering Sophia. In the end, Sophia retracted her power while clenching her hands. Sophia panted a few times while looking at the stingray. She never expected to find herself in this type of situation, wondering what she should do. "My magic power isn't going to last," Sophia frowned. "I need to make a little sacrifice to kill this stingray." Stealing her resolve, Sophia said, "You can't defeat me." The stingray harumphed and shook his head. "That's not something you decide." "You think?" Sophia smiled as if looking down on him. The stingray dove down and prepared to attack her again. She had yet to realize that the stingray was thinking the same thing as her. They both wanted to end this battle as soon as possible. Although Sophia had exhausted her magic power, the stingray realized his body wasn't going to last because of the injuries he had suffered from her dry ice. Hence, the stingray wanted to end it with this movement even if it required a small sacrifice. He flew straight to her while forming a dust drill that would penetrate everything. As if responding to his attack, Sophia formed several thick ice walls. Unfortunately, these walls were not enough to stop the stingray because they immediately shattered into pieces upon contact with the drill. The stingray continued with the same speed while carefully observing his surroundings to locate Sophia. He didn't find her until the last wall. As soon as he broke the last layer, Sophia was the last wall that caught his fins in order to stop him. She even froze her own body and formed a small wall to support her body to avoid losing against his strength. Before the dust destroyed her, Sophia smirked and said, "I caught you, Ice Boom." K. The stingray gritted his teeth and looked Sophia in the eyes. The magic circle released a high amount of dry icy wind that engulfed both of them. Sophia was immune to this power while the stingray was frozen in an instant. However, the shockwave still blew both of them away. Sophia landed several meters away while the stingray fell to the ground at the same distance. Still, his fins shattered into pieces, and he wouldn't be able to continue the fight anymore. As much as she wanted to celebrate her victory, she soon found something was missing from the stingray. "Wait, where's the dust?" Sophia looked around, finding nothing. Little did she know, there was another thing that she missed. The stingray turned out to be severing his own tail and launched it using the dust. The tail flew straight to Sophia. "Holy!" Sophia widened her eyes but couldn't avoid it. The tail ended up piercing her stomach and creating a hole in it. Sophia looked down and thought, "Am I going to die? Kais, I will bring you with me. Even if I need to die, I can make Kai Carter suffer. That is, if he can survive in the battle against my king." The stingray tiredly glared at Sophia, who was still shocked by the tale. However, his life ended soon when two portals appeared on the battlefield. One was before the tail and sucked the tail inside. The other one was on top of the stingray, releasing the tail. The tail then pierced through his head, shattered it into a few pieces, ultimately killing him. Leah made her appearance next to Sophia, who spat a mouthful of blood and dropped to the ground. She managed to catch her and teleported her to the top of the building where Evan stayed. Her hands were shaking, but Leah maintained eye contact with Sophia, saying, "Stay awake, okay? Evan is going to heal you." Evan also hurriedly went to her and used his magic to heal her. Chapter 587, Ayaka vs. Shrimp, Part 1. Just like Sophia, Ayaka faced a similar situation. Her opponent was a shrimp. His body was 3 meters long and created an S shape instead of curving like C. He had 2 pairs of walking legs that seemed to be sharp enough to be a blade. It was like he was wielding two pairs of scythes. His body was red and showed no weakness. Ayaka, on the other hand, only wielded her spear and a pair of shoes Kai made for her to add the initial boost of her momentum. "So, how do I cook you?" Ayaka muttered while squinting her eyes. "Deep fry? Normal? Or—" Before she finished, the shrimp shouted in anger. "Shut up, human! Your puny life wants to kill this lord? Impossible." Ayaka ignored him and licked her lips as if she could taste him already. "This is gonna be good. You're going to be the first seafood that I catch myself." The shrimp couldn't contain his anger anymore and leaped toward Ayaka while swinging both his scythes. Ayaka ducked down and let him hit her spear. The spear rotated because of the force while Ayaka disappeared. Suddenly, the shrimp's vision raised even though he was looking straight at Ayaka's spear before realizing what had happened. He hurriedly turned around and saw Ayaka lifting his body easily. Even though he wasn't that big, his weight was around 300 kilograms. It wasn't easy to lift him up, so the shrimp was stunned when he saw Ayaka raising his body. Ayaka, on the contrary, felt the shrimp light, considering her ant blood allowed her to carry something a few times heavier than her body's weight. With the addition of intense training for the past year, along with the control over her magic power or magic particles, Ayaka could lift something more than 10 times of her body weight. The moment the shrimp's body was in the air, a red magic circle appeared beneath the shrimp and exploded. Boom! The magic circle caused a huge explosion, engulfing both of them. More importantly, that kind of explosion produced a powerful shockwave that helped Ayaka in turning his body over. She dove down headfirst, like a German suplex, but with the additional force of the explosion. As soon as the shrimp's head hit the ground, it was buried underneath the earth. Without underestimating her opponent, Ayaka leaped forward and grabbed the spear that had fallen to the ground. The shrimp obviously didn't like what Ayaka had done. It spun its body, erupting from the ground in an instant. Immediately after, the water next to them began to rise, as if the shrimp were controlling it. Ayaka finally recognized the shrimp's magic. "I guess you don't have anyone with fire magic in your rank. It's either water, lightning, and wind. I'm sad." The shrimp rebuked her while waving his hand, controlling the water to flood the area. "Keep underestimating us and you will pay dearly." Ayaka glanced to the side and struck the ground with her spear. Another red-colored magic circle appeared and caused a fan-shaped series of explosions. The explosions dispersed the water easily while Ayaka smiled. "What did you say again?" The shrimp clenched his teeth and leaped toward her. Ayaka also planned to challenge him in terms of strength, wondering how far she could go with her momentum and strength. She waved her spear downwards while the shrimp caught her spear with 4 feet. Bam! The collision produced a loud sound to the surroundings, along with the shockwave. However, the two seemed to have realized each other's brute force. Ayaka tried to keep pushing down, but the shrimp didn't budge. The same applied to the shrimp who tried to push the spear back, seeing their strength was equal. The spear and the 4 legs went sideways, as both Ayaka and the shrimp leaned to the right. Not letting go of the spear, the shrimp hurriedly summoned more water that seeped through the ground. From there, 3 water pillars rose, surrounding Ayaka. 3 execution pillars. Ayaka's expression turned serious as a red flame soon covered her entire body. After that, another magic circle emerged beneath her. Scarlet explosion. Boom! The explosion engulfed both of them while blowing away all the water pillars. Ayaka was uninjured because her flame armor protected her body. Meanwhile, the shrimp seemed to be fine as well with water covering his body. Both of them realized their magic countered each other, making this battle a long one. Unfortunately, Ayaka couldn't afford a prolonged battle. The reason was the same as others. She didn't have enough magic power to last that long. That was the only weakness the girls had in this battle. They simply had no time to gather more magic power, even though they managed to increase the power of their magic and strength to the level of the sea races. Top 10 fighters. Seeing that the battle wouldn't progress as she imagined, Ayaka decided to make a risky move. She placed her hand on the ground and created a huge magic circle. However, the shrimp didn't let her do whatever she wanted. He raised his hand and a few more water pillars broke through the ground and resurfaced, destroying the magic circle. Ayaka only took a look at the magic circle's condition for a moment and headed straight to the shrimp with her spear. Behind her spear was another magic circle. As if understanding her power, Another water pillar emerged behind him and flew to Ayaka at high speed, creating enough force to blow one away. Ayaka wanted to dodge it, but her momentum was too fast, so there would be a huge chance for her to slip when changing direction. Hence, Ayaka struck the water with all her might. The magic circle also released an incredible amount of fire and boosted the spear's power, splitting the water into two. She continued to do it for a while, and got closer and closer to the shrimp, but when she was about to reach him, the shrimp moved to the side while clapping both walking legs. This forced Ayaka to move to the side, because several water pillars came from several directions, trying to hit her stomach. If she received that kind of pressure, a broken bone was possible. Surprisingly, the shrimp continued controlling the water pillar. Instead of shooting in one direction, the water pillars began to move like that of a snake, bouncing left and right. Ayaka soon realized these 7 water pillars were completely under the shrimp's control, making it even harder to get close to him. It was clear the solution to this type of attack was dispersing them, but Ayaka chose another way, trying to outsmart the shrimp. After all, that was the only way to defeat a stronger opponent. A pair of wings appeared on her back as she jumped up and let the wing take over. The shrimp was surprised to see Ayaka flying, but he soon made the pillars follow her. Ayaka furrowed her eyebrows because she soon realized she couldn't fly too high, or the shrimp might target the others instead of her. After contemplating for a few minutes, she summoned a huge magic circle above her head. Scarlet explosion. Boom. The explosion engulfed both of them again while evaporating the water. Ayaka dove down while the shrimp waved all his feet. Inside the smoke, a clicking sound echoed in the area as it produced a powerful shockwave that dispersed the steam. Chapter 508, Ayaka vs. Shrimp, Part 2. Boom. The shockwave blew all the steam away, revealing Ayaka and the shrimp's appearances. The shrimp managed to withstand Ayaka's spear, while Ayaka tried to push him down with another explosion on top of her spear. Not wanting to get hit, the shrimp summoned a few water pillars and surrounded the magic circle. Instead of engulfing it, he spun the water, trying to extinguish the fire before it caused an explosion. His plan succeeded because no explosion occurred until the magic circle disappeared. Tisk. Ayaka clicked her tongue and looked to the left. No one can save you. The shrimp harumphed and turned around, trying to take away her spear. Scarlet explosion. Ayaka summoned another magic circle beneath them without hesitation. Boom. The explosion engulfed them again, but the fire soon disappeared with Ayaka coming out of the smoke unscathed. The same applied to the shrimp, as he couldn't understand Ayaka's train of thought. He didn't know whether Ayaka was careful or reckless, because she kept changing between both of them. Ayaka raised her hand and summoned several star-shaped flames. This magic was inspired by her firebirds in the past. They might be useless, but this version wasn't the same. Firestar. Those 10 fire stars flew forward, heading straight to the shrimp as if they were tracking on them. The shrimp tested their power by sending several water pillars to extinguish them. However, the fire stars soon formed a line with a certain gap between them. The star in the front hit the water pillar and turned it into steam. That burst of steam dispersed the water pillars in the surrounding, allowing the stars to head straight to the shrimp, albeit the latter was already gone. Huh? Ayaka widened her eyes, not seeing the shrimp anywhere. She looked left and right, but still couldn't find anything. Where did he go? Did he escape? Did he use the smoke from the steam to hide? When Ayaka was about to search for him, the ground beneath her feet started to crack. Below, Ayaka panicked and jumped up. Unfortunately, the shrimp's legs had caught her legs and pinned her to the ground. After that, the shrimp made his appearance and sent a fist to her jaw. Not good. Ayaka formed a magic shield to protect her, but it was shattered in an instant. The shrimp ended up giving an uppercut and launching her into the air. 2 of her teeth fell off from the impact, as her lower jaw seemed to be broken, making her endure the constant pain. The shrimp took this chance to launch another attack. Ayaka raised her spear to block them, but the shrimp grasped it with his walking legs and hit Ayaka's legs with his swimming legs. Not wanting to be beaten up easily, Ayaka raised both feet higher and knocked them down. Her plan succeeded because none of the attacks connected, allowing her to sustain her body, albeit she soon experienced pain from her stomach. She was blown away and crashed to the ground. Rolling a few times, she ended up stopping 20 meters from the landing spot. Ayaka endured all the pain and rose from the ground. She looked up and saw her spear getting thrown away by the shrimp. And to make it even worse, the shrimp landed in front of her and leaped forward, planning to deal another strike. Ayaka hurriedly stepped to the side while raising both hands, covering her body with flame armor. However, the shrimp reacted to her movement and hit her lower arms, blowing her away. This is the end. The shrimp felt confident in defeating Ayaka and planned to maintain this superiority until he killed her. I can't cut you because of that annoying flame armor, but you will die sooner or later. Not wanting to lose, Ayaka steeled her resolve and made a hard decision. Right before the shrimp hit her, Ayaka opened her arms wide and caught his walking legs for the first time. Useless struggle, the shrimp snorted. No, where do you think we're standing? Ayaka made a tired smile. Huh? The shrimp furrowed his eyebrows, not understanding her words. However, a huge magic circle suddenly appeared out of nowhere. What? The shrimp was dumbstruck because he didn't feel the magic power fluctuating from Ayaka. That meant Ayaka didn't use her power this time. Then, where did it come from? The shrimp looked around, trying to find the culprit. Ayaka chuckled and made a smug smile. You don't remember, huh? That smile of hers reminded him of a certain magic circle. It was the biggest magic circle Ayaka had summoned, but he managed to destroy it by summoning a few water pillars from underground. Wait, this place is... The shrimp came to a realization and looked around him, finding more and more magic power fluctuation. Ayaka snapped her finger and revealed the real magic circle. It turned out, the big one was nothing but a fake. The real magic circle was not one, but around 50 magic circles. These magic circles were none other than Ayaka's time bomb she prepared as the worst scenario. I guess I need to use this. Ayaka smirked and covered her body with fire. Let's see who is stronger, the water that covers your body or my flame armor. You are crazy, he shouted in anger while using his water to protect his body. Little did he know, she had this concept from the first time she and Kai hunted together. It was in the virtual world, and Kai literally dragged many monsters with him. However, she made sure to adjust her power, making sure her body managed to endure everything. After all, she couldn't afford to die since she wanted to spend the rest of her life with Kai. Time bomb, release. Ayaka smiled and activated the magic while pinning the shrimp down. The red light shone, blinding many people's eyes. After that, a series of explosions occurred in unison, engulfing Ayaka and the shrimp. Boom. Because of the number of explosions, they didn't create mushroom smoke, but it certainly covered a part of the battlefield with it. Seeing such a scene, Leah hurriedly flew toward the smoke, trying to rescue her. Ayaka had told her about this plan, so she had been standing by. Unfortunately, she couldn't convince Ayaka to use a safer method. Ayaka! Leah shouted inside the smoke, trying to sense Ayaka's body. She kept running around to find her before something tripped her over. Leah managed to avoid the fall, but she soon dropped to her knees and used her teleportation, transferring her and the thing that tripped her. Luckily, the one that came out with her was none other than Ayaka. However, her condition was terrible. 70% of her body was charred, and almost all her hair was burned. She spared no effort in getting Ayaka to Evan, asking him to heal her. Evan, I'm working on it, he replied in frustration as he was healing both her and Sophia simultaneously. After seeing Ayaka's state, he couldn't help but gasp. A water bubble hurriedly wrapped her and started healing her wound. How is he? Ayaka opened her mouth tiredly. You should care about your body more. I don't think you will gain any scars after I heal you, but your hair, I'm afraid I can't recover them. You need a long time to regrow it. Evan let out a long sigh, looking at this rash girl. Leah gritted her teeth and turned around, looking at the state of the shrimp. As soon as the smoke was cleared, she could only find several shrimp's parts and his head. He has died. You killed him. Hearing her words made Ayaka feel relieved. She finally lowered her guard and received the treatment fully. I see. Chapter 58-9. Rhea vs. Shark. Part 1. Despite all the fights on the entire battlefield, the fiercest one was none other than Rhea Ross against the shark, Marza. Both of them were close combat fighters that focused on offensive battle, leaving nothing to defend themselves. From the very first move, Rhea utilized her most powerful form without hesitation. Sword Saint form. Her body was soon wrapped in white light, and a sword tattoo appeared below on her right eye. 5 swords were hovering around her while she also wielded 2 swords. Marza narrowed his eyes and said, "It seems you have become even stronger." Without a word, Rhea disappeared and attacked. Tiesk. Marza clicked his tongue and covered his entire body in water. This layer of water was far stronger than Rhea's blades. He simply raised his arm to block both swords. Rhea had no interest in his nonsense, so she chose to remain silent. Seeing her attack blocked, she took a step back and kicked him in the waist. Normally, Marza wouldn't look at this kind of attack, but he found something interesting in her kick. Another white blade, shaped perfectly to follow the line of her foot, emerged and hit his water armor. He waved his tail to smack the foot away before throwing a punch directly to her face. Suddenly, Rhea's sword turned into a shield, protecting her from that punch. She then waved her other sword that soon changed its shape into a mace. Bam! The collision between the armor and the mace produced a clicking sound along with a small shockwave. I feel that one. Marza gritted his teeth and punched her stomach. A plate of white armor formed before her stomach and contained the punch, albeit the force still blew her away. Rhea also felt the pain from the punch, but didn't show any reaction to appear strong. An ever-changing magic. Marza gradually understood Rhea's magic, especially after that series of attacks. He never thought someone could master something like this. He asked, "How can you do something like this? Each shape is different, and there are so many details, yet you're still fighting me in close combat." Rhea raised her head, looking down at Marza as if to say, "I'm stronger than you." Marza took a deep breath, reevaluating Rhea's worth. He thought for a moment and formed another shape from his body armor, a blade. "I shall seriously fight you." He leaped to the front and waved his sword down. Rhea took a few steps to the side before changing both swords into a glaive, striking his abdomen. Marza used more strength to increase his speed and struck the glaive, using gravity to help him. However, Rhea simply overpowered him by summoning a pillar from the ground that hit the handle, launching the glaive into the air. With this boost, Rhea knocked him away before stabbing him with the 5 swords around her. Marza raised his hands and tried to block his head, that seemed to be the target of the swords. Boom, boom, boom. The swords hit the arms in succession because Rhea wanted to attack one same spot, and because of her strategy, there was a small gap between the water where Marza's arm wasn't protected by the water. In other words, Rhea managed to break through his water barrier. On top of that, there was a small scratch that led to bleeding. Marza felt the pain as his body started shaking. He could endure the pain, but he couldn't bear the humiliation of becoming the first to be injured. Marza's eyes turned bloodshot as the sword disappeared from his hand. He grabbed Rhea's sword so she didn't move and punched her on the chest. Rhea was surprised when Marza didn't raise his guard like earlier. She hurriedly struck his hand a few times in order to destroy the water barrier. Unfortunately, Marza's fist also hit her on the chest, blowing her away. Gah! She coughed a few times and looked at Marza's hand that was also bleeding. "Okay, I have decided. I am going to kill you." Marza glared at Rhea Ross and leaped forward. Water punch. The punch released a massive horizontal water tornado and engulfed her. But Rhea Ross wasn't someone who took the beating. Several white lights appeared from within and sliced the wave multiple times, revealing Rhea's appearance. She was unscathed. Rhea Ross harumphed while waving her sword. A crescent-shaped white light ran through the ground, leaving a white trail as it passed. This was Rhea's usual attack, but the shark soon noticed the difference. "Wait, this attack. Aren't you supposed to create the trail first? This attack formed the trail as it passed?" Marza knew that Rhea's strength had gone to an unprecedented level. She never thought Rhea could become this much stronger within a year. He took a glance at Rhea's people as well and noticed their increase in power. He was shocked because they had gone past his expectations. Is this the humans' adaptability that is said to be the reason they can survive and rule the land since ancient times? Marza gritted his teeth. Of course, Marza hadn't taken into account their individual talent and the experience they had with Kai. They had constantly been pushing their limit just by becoming his teammate. Those 3 years in high school weren't a waste. If they hadn't met Kai, their strength would be limited like Haruko's. The 1-year training they received from Leah was simply to let their talent bloom and reach its peak. With this newfound power, the entire group created their own fighting style that could surprise their opponents, making them shocked by their increase in power. This would create an illusion they were equal against them. If the sea monsters actually fought them in a battle of attrition, the girls would have lost. That was why Ayaka and Sophia gained those injuries. They needed to change the battle from attrition warfare to a flash fight, deciding the battle in an instant. And Rhea, who already far surpassed them in the past, trained harder than anyone else to prove that her throne wasn't for them to take. She raised her swords and combined them together. The two swords turned into a spear, and Rhea thrust forward. Extend! The spear extended at fast speed, catching up with the shark's movement. This is easy. The shark stepped to the side, avoiding the spear. However, a magic circle suddenly appeared on the spear's handle, aiming at him. Another flying sword emerged from the magic circle and hit the shark. That is surprising, but the shark snorted and let the sword hit his water armor. As one would expect, the water armor stopped the sword easily. See, this is my Poe. The shark turned back to Rhea Ross, only to find her fist coming toward his face. What? The shark bounced to the ground a few times before stopping after 30 meters. He raised his vision and saw Rhea coming toward him. On her hands were gloves coupled with blades, ready to break through his armor. Shark in the deep. Marza gritted his teeth and placed his hand on the ground. Suddenly, the water burst out of the ground and formed a huge shark's head, moving forward to devour Rhea. Although Rhea stopped, Marza witnessed his shark split in half with Rhea holding a long two-handed sword. Seriously, this woman, she can use every weapon. She is the one blessed by the sword. Chapter 590, Rhea vs. Shark. Part 2, Marza took a few deep breaths as Rhea approached him. She swung that long sword, carrying all the momentum she had. Marza was forced to form an additional shield to block this attack. Even then, the sword broke his shield apart and slightly cut the water armor. At the same time, the force was enough for him to gain another distance from her. Wave. Marza placed his hand on the ground, and water began to burst out of the ground. Rhea narrowed her eyes, realizing that he might use this burst of water to launch her upward. Hence, she summoned another 5 swords around her and sent them to him. Shark in the deep. The shark head re-emerged and swallowed the swords, heading straight to her. Rhea avoided it effortlessly and jumped forward with her spear in the front. Next. When Rhea was about to thrust her spear, Marza already ran sideways as if he didn't plan to be trapped in another Rhea's trick. Little did he know. Rhea's trick was to make him move by faking this one thrust. What? Marza opened his mouth in shock when he saw Rhea following him instead of finishing her thrust. She then waved her spear to the ground and formed a crescent-shaped white light that approached him with a quick speed. Instead of destroying Rhea's attack, Marza chose to do something unique. For the first time in his life, he realized that taking a step back was necessary to win the war. He swallowed that pride, thinking only the loser would move back, and jumped a few centimeters above the ground. After that, he caught Rhea's attack with his hand and absorbed all that momentum to launch him away from Rhea. This way, he could gain enough distance to plan his next move, albeit he didn't have that kind of chance. Suddenly, Michelle appeared. She had been staying low this whole time by looping around from one shadow after another, making her way to Rhea's battlefield. Now that she arrived behind the shark, Michelle summoned all her sides and released her bloodlust. Blood began to flow out of her mouth despite not having any injury. It was clear she was pushing herself beyond her limit by using her own lifespan to supply the magic power. And everything was only for one moment. What? Marza turned around and saw Michelle's sides going all over him. Gah! Michelle spat a mouthful of blood while enduring the pain in her body. She used her remaining magic power to strike Marza. However, Marza used that split-second chance to jump to the side. His only thought was to survive. Etch. Unfortunately for him, one of the scythes still touched the water. Michelle used all 8 scythes worth of Shadow Slash and concentrated it in one single spot. Shadow Slash. Michelle released all her power and split the water armor around his arm. Marza kicked his tongue and kept moving, trying to go away. Not letting him go, Rhea Ross reappeared behind him with a one-edged blade. She bent her knees and cut the exposed arm with one stroke. Arg! You little beachy cheech! Marza gritted his teeth and kicked Michelle on the stomach. Gah! Michelle spat another mouthful of blood and bounced to the ground a few times. When she stopped, Michelle didn't move anymore as she had already passed out. Thank you. The chance you made has turned into our favor. Rhea squinted her eyes and saw Marza planning to cover his ripped arm with water. Rhea obviously wouldn't allow him to recover, or even worse, formed another arm with his water. Hence, Rhea stabbed the exposed arm with another sword, preventing it from getting close. Cage. Marza gritted his teeth and jumped to the side. However, there was another sword wave that ran through the ground, hitting him from behind. Ah! Marza wailed in pain as the water on his back was exposed as well. With one sword planted on Marza's arm, the four others flew toward his exposed back and pierced him. This is the end. Rhea spun her body and waved her blade, trying to cut the exposed area. Shark in the deep. Rhea looked at the shark that was going to swallow both of them and retracted her blade for a bit and used it to cut the water shark. Rhea also didn't wish to waste her chance, so she kicked Marza's back while forming another blade around her shoe. The blade cut Marza's side as blood began to flow out. Ugh! With both injuries, Marza's movement started to get sluggish. She has created this chance for me, I can't waste it, you see. Rhea clenched her fist and covered it with a white glove. Because of her position, she couldn't attack the back again, so she used all her strength to hit Marza on the stomach. The water armor stopped her attack, but Marza felt the punch that upset his stomach. Even then, Rhea had no sign of stopping. Ha! Rhea shouted, raising her own morale to push through the water armor. She even formed a white pillar to boost her hand. Despite feeling her hand was about to snap, she continued. The water wasn't idle either. They spread all over her hand and ripped her skin. Just like Marza, her hand was covered with blood, and excruciating pain jolted her mind. Yet Rhea didn't let go of that fist, and continued to push through until she finally broke the armor. Wah! The shark couldn't believe what he saw, because human brute force managed to break through his water armor. He could understand if it was her magic, but the last one was simply her brute force. Unfortunately for him, his shock ended soon because Rhea's hand pierced through his body. And the moment her hand entered his body, several blades popped out around her hand and destroyed all his organs by cutting them into pieces like that of a chainsaw. She continued to the head until he split it in half. You Astro! The shark was still in shock when he uttered his last word. However, he couldn't finish his words because Rhea had ripped his head apart. Ha! Rhea panted a few times as her body was covered with blood. At the same time, her hand seemed to be broken because she couldn't feel anything from it, let alone move it. She hurriedly pulled her hand as the shark's body fell to the ground. Looking back, she saw Leah recovering Michelle's body. Take care of her. Okay, said Rhea to Leah. I understand. Leah nodded furiously. What will you do? She helped me for one reason. I am the only one who can change the direction of this battle. Rhea shook her hand. Because she couldn't move her hand, she summoned another pillar next to her and placed his hand there. She just made sure her hand was straight, pointing at the front. After that, a huge light pillar flashed before her eyes and formed another weapon. It was a huge bow. Her other hand formed a long spear that became her arrow, pointing to a certain creature on the battlefield. And I will make sure her help doesn't go to waste. God's Arrow, Locratia. Chapter 591, Devane vs. Turtle, Part 1. If Rhea's battle was the fiercest, the toughest one was none other than Devane's battle. He was facing the most powerful turtle in the world. He managed to climb his position by only defending his opponent's attack. Hence, even Devane had no confidence in confronting him. Standing in front of the turtle, Devane took a few deep breaths. He didn't know whether he had enough strength to kill him or not. But Devane had promised Kai to defeat his opponent. On the other hand, the turtle, C, raised his shell as his shield while saying, "To think King Gilgamesh made another group to maintain the record. We have some suspicions about it, but have no clue. It must be because of your small population." King Gilgamesh? Devane narrowed his eyes, never expecting C to call him king in his name. Even as an enemy, I have heard about his tale and respected such a man. Without our sophisticated plan, King Gilgamesh would continue to grow and become the ruler of the planet. After all, not many protectors can kill two protectors alone. C shook his head. That's right, your trick. Devane released his killing intent. I wish that King Gilgamesh could do something like our current king. However, I no longer have such a wish. I only know that our king shall defeat your Neptune. I won't dare to draw the conclusion of their battle, since both of their strengths are beyond my imagination. But I believe in my own king." C smiled. "Unfortunately, all of you are going to die right now." Devine snorted and remembered Kai's instruction to all of them. After hearing that plan, they couldn't help but see their chance to win the battle, despite the gap between their strength. Recalling his words, a smile appeared on Devane's face as he raised his stance. His hands suddenly turned black, as if metal just cladded them. "Devane!" Devane shouted his name and jumped forward. "Interesting. I, C, shall be your opponent." The turtle smirked and ran toward him. Both of them stopped before each other as Devane sent a punch while Sei raised his shield. Bam! A huge sound echoed in the area from the collision. Devane and C had no movement, as their strengths seemed to be equal. They tried to push each other forward, but none yielded. Ultimately, Devane stomped the ground and turned it into a crater. With them losing their footholds, Devane spun his body and kicked his shield, pushing him back. That kick indeed blew him away, but CA landed softly on the ground before charging at him. Suddenly, several 3x3-meter translucent screens appeared around C and moved together with him. Devane furrowed his eyebrows and lightly hit the ground, forcing some pebbles to rise into the air. A black magic circle formed in front of him as he launched all those pebbles together. The magic circle turned them into black metal. Devane tightened his grip when the pebbles crushed upon his shield. Moving like a bullet, but heavy like a cannonball's, C muttered inwardly as his shield was pushed against him. Even so, he persisted and continued running forward until he reached Devane's position. "Shield." He pulled his shield back while Devane prepared to punch him. When he was about to slam his shield to Devane, he took a step back as all the 5 screens around him trapped Devane inside with 4 walls in all directions, and one on top of him. Compress. Suddenly, 2 of the walls moved close to each other, trying to crush Devane. Devane extended his hands to both screens before realizing he couldn't stop them. He then stepped on the ground and deepened the crater around him, allowing a gap on the bottom. Using that gap, Devane escaped from the walls and rolled on the ground. However, there was a reason why the wall was translucent. The turtle could observe his movement this way. Before Devane could recover his stance, the turtle jumped on top of him and slammed his shield against him. Boom! Another loud sound echoed as the crater became even deeper. Luckily, Devane had enough time to cover his body with metal, or the shield would have crushed his bones. KH. Devane clicked his tongue. The shield was bigger than him, so he had no way to attack the turtle like this. But this also meant the turtle had no more force to push him because his foot didn't touch the ground. He used that chance to release all his strength to push the shield into the air. Unfortunately for him, this allowed the turtle to use his other magic. The shield that was about to crush Devane earlier regrouped with him and formed a sharp-pointed tip to pierce Devane. The latter hurriedly rolled a few times on the ground to avoid it. Bam! Sei chased him and tried to slam his shield, but Devane's form was more stable than the previous one. His foot suddenly came from the side and kicked the shield upward. Ci tightened his grip to avoid it getting blown away, but it left him unguarded, and Devane used that chance to launch his body into the air while spinning like crazy. He used that rotation to extend one of his feet to Ci's head. Bam! Ci was blown away just like him, crashing 30 meters away. They both used the distance to regain their balance and raise their stances again. "You're stronger than I thought." C squinted. "This is the first time I've seen someone with this kind of power. Your metal power may be able to pierce through my defense, much like the princess and Maza. I don't need that state. All I need is to defeat you." Devane snorted and bent his knees. He gripped the ground, his fingers crushing the earth as they dug deeper. After that, he pulled the ground that turned out to be a ball, the size of his head. Devane covered it with his power while forming a long black stick as its handle. A mace. Sei was amused by his choice of weapon, but it didn't matter to him as he continued to attack. Devane also approached him while swinging his black mace. "Ha!" Devane shouted and smashed the shield. The turtle soon realized that Devane's strength increased exponentially. KH. The turtle gritted his teeth and was pushed back for the first time in a head-on confrontation. This kind of power? No, This doesn't use much magic power. If that's the case, then his magic is C, came to a realization as he looked at Devane in surprise. Your magic is concentrated metal. Instead of covering an object with metal, you reinforce it by gathering a huge amount of magic power around it. That's how you can gain massive strength in every attack. But this magic also puts a strain on your reserve. Hearing those words, Devane only snorted. Why didn't you say it's similar to your magic? You realized it? C became even more amazed by Devane. Our power is similar. You can also concentrate your magic power to form a stronger barrier. Those gates you used to defend Mam Ria's attack were formed by that kind of power. That's why the closer it is to your body, the stronger the barrier is. Impressive. I have lived for 500 years, but you certainly amuse me. Unfortunately, I won't face another human since we will win this war. Seer charged forward. Useless talk. Devane snorted and approached him again with his mace. The mace and the shield soon clashed once again, producing a shockwave to the surroundings. Chapter 592, Devane vs. Turtle. Part 2. Devane waved his mace from the side, trying to go past the shield, but a barrier emerged as if it was the extension of the field. It was so strong that it blocked his attack completely. Ci had been fighting Devane for a few minutes already, and he realized Devane had been using his full power from the start, as if he wanted to settle the fight as soon as possible. As long as he prolonged this fight, C should exhaust his magic power sooner or later. That would be the time to launch a counterattack. As if seeing through his thoughts, Devane snorted. Do you think you can handle all my attacks? Ho, I should be the one who asked you that question. Can you break past my defense? C snorted while confidently blocking every single attack. Then I will let you see the real attack. Devane smirked and smashed his shield once again, pinning him to the ground. Ha! Devane seemed to try hard to destroy his shield, but this only invited laughter from CA. You can't defeat me this way. C snorted and continued withstanding Devane's power. I know, I can't defeat you. Devane smiled. However, the king's command is absolute. That's why I will kill you here right now. C squinted his eyes and smirked. Then, let me see how you can kill me. Fine. Suddenly, they felt magic power fluctuation. It was a massive amount of magic power, so they could feel it even though they were a bit far from her. Both Devane and C turned their head to the left, seeing a huge bow. What? That attack. C drew a gasp as he remembered that particular attack that broke his gates. However, the current Rhea had much more magic power than the previous her, so Sei couldn't help but see the possibility of her arrow piercing through everything. But with Rhea pulling that kind of big move, her opponent should have stopped her. It was the time Sei realized Marza had fallen. Impossible. Seiya gnashed his teeth, recalling the speed of her arrow. It wasn't something he could avoid, especially at this distance. Seeing the opportunity, Devane leaped back without hesitation, allowing Rhea to focus on Sei. God's arrow, Lokrasia. Rhea released her arrow as the magic power enveloping the arrow chipped away the ground beneath it, creating a huge trail on the ground. Sei also didn't want to die, so he faced it with his strongest defense. 7-star domain gates. The turtle shouted as a red metal gate emerged from the ground. Orange gate followed right after and continued with the color of the rainbow. All 7 gates were aligned, planning to receive this god-killing arrow. The turtle suddenly felt an immense pressure coming from his shield as the god-killing arrow hit the first gate. This was the second time he received such a powerful attack from a mere human, but he also felt the difference in power from the previous god's arrow. Arg! Saul C bit his lips when the first gate shattered into pieces. The arrow then hit and shattered it again. The scene was exactly the same as the one from a year ago. The arrow's magic power continuously dispersed, but it also managed to destroy C's gates. The 6th gate, the orange gate, didn't break last year, but Rhea's arrow was much stronger this time. It soon cracked the 6th gate and shattered into pieces. However, C soon realized he managed to chip 70% of its power with all 6 gates. His last gate was the strongest, so he placed his confidence in this gate. Ha! The collision produced the biggest shockwave of the day, second only to Kai's sound wave. It blew away all magical beasts that tried to help Ci. Come on! Ci felt as if his hand were about to snap as he contained the arrow. However, he used all his strength just to block this one particular attack. Only 10% of my magic power left. She fought Marza earlier, so this is not even her full power. I should be able to handle it. Ha! The moment the magic power was reduced to a mere 5%, C thought he got this. Little did he know, there was another devil that would take advantage of this situation. Instead of going toward his back, where the arrow sent all its magic power, Devane appeared behind the arrow. What? Sei widened his eyes, never expecting Devane to do this kind of reckless move. Even though he was behind the arrow, the magic power was still rampaging around it. This ripped C's shirt, which was the closest to it, as the residual magic power even shredded his metal skin. Such a powerful attack. No wonder he is our king's personal mentor. Devane smiled and reached the arrow with his left hand. As he expected, the magic power broke a few bones and covered his arm with wounds. But Devane didn't hesitate and channeled his power into the arrow, turning the arrow into a black-colored metal arrow. Impossible. C dropped his jaw to the ground as he saw Devane pulling his other hand. In that instant, he gave one last push to the arrow by punching its back. Die, your turtle. This is the so-called sophisticated plan, not like your evil scheme in the past. Bam! He hit the arrow with all his strength, and the arrow finally broke through the last gate, stabbing the turtle. It continued to push through and created a huge explosion on the ground, reducing Sei's body into pieces as all of them were blown apart. The explosion also engulfed Devane and launched him into the air. At the same time, Rhea also dropped to her knees as she had no magic power left. Ha ha! Rhea smiled as they managed to kill Sei in this situation. There was only one opponent left, and Devane should be enough to help Abba. Leah transported Devane back to Rhea's side while checking his condition. Can you continue? Leah asked with a worried expression. Blood was covering his body, and his left arm couldn't be used anymore for today. Can Evan fix this body? Devane asked and pointed at his wounds, especially his left hand that bent in a weird way. Yeah, but it will take time, around 30 minutes I think. He is also treating Michelle and Sophia right now, Leah answered with a disappointed expression. In that case, I don't need that. Devane held his breath and snapped his bone again, returning it to normal. Although he couldn't use it, it wouldn't go in his way later. This should be enough for now. My wounds are also superficial for now, so I think I can help Elder Abba. Okay, I'm counting on you. Leah nodded. I can't fight anyone after all. No. You have done your job so well. With all these fights going around, none of the magical beasts interfered with our fights. This is due to your placement of troops. Rhea smiled and patted her shoulder. Anyway, I'll be counting on you, Devane. Yes, ma'am. Devane nodded with a solemn expression, as he didn't want to lose against Rhea, who went all the way to help him. After that, Leah returned with Rhea, while Devane stabilized his body for a moment before heading to another battlefield. Chapter 593, Abba vs. Mermaid Princess, Part 1. Still, the battle between the second strongest members of both sides was held on top of the water. Abba knew Ilarica could have interfered with them had they fought on land. Abba stood in front of her with a solemn face. You did a great job earlier, Ilarica smirked, squinting her eyes. Abba knew what she was talking about and replied, Your king was just too incompetent. There are a few things you are not supposed to say. Ilarica's expression became serious. Really? I am not afraid of anyone. Abba shook her head with a calm expression. Oh, you aren't even afraid of your own king? I guess humanity will soon face another catastrophe when a person like you is not afraid of him. You do not understand my statement. There is no need to fear him because he is someone you can trust, without him instilling fear upon us. Unlike your king, who has such deep trust issues that you all must fear him just so he can feel some sense of security. Arba laughed. You're running your mouth. Ilarica was pissed off by the comment and raised her staff. A huge humanoid body began to form above the water. Water elemental. Ilarica waved her hand as the humanoid body raised its hands, forming a huge water ball. Unless you're underwater, you can't win against me, Arba snorted, staring at the water ball that soon flew toward her. Arba simply raised her finger as a colossal barrier erected before her, dispersing all the water. I think you need to look around you. Ilareka smiled as she prepared another trick in the water. However, Arba picked her trick up and snapped her fingers, forming a mighty gale that pushed the water away. What are you talking about? Ilareka squinted her eyes. She waved down her hand as the elemental followed her movement, trying to slap Arba. The latter covered her fist with torrential wind and struck the giant hand. The wind then dispersed the water, ultimately obliterating the hand. After that, Arba flew toward Ilareka and struck this 60 meters humanoid body. The moment she hit the head, a tornado appeared and kept climbing down, dispersing all the water that formed the body. However, Ilareka was still the strongest person after Neptune. She wouldn't go down without a fight. Seeing Arba destroying the humanoid body, the water began to rise, forming a bigger body. This bigger body contained more magic power than she initially used to suppress the tornado inside, stopping the humanoid body from breaking apart. Little did she know, Arba's target was not the humanoid body, it was her. Arba reappeared next to Ilareka and sent her fist. However, torrential water that matched the velocity of the wind appeared next to her, forming a spherical barrier that stopped Arba's fist. I know you're going to do that, Ilareka smiled. Arba glanced to the side and saw the water elemental had recovered and its fist was about to hit her. She hurriedly raised both hands and created a windshield to block this fist. The water elemental slammed her into the water, where Ilareka gained the advantage. Surprisingly, Ilareka already swam around her with her mermaid tail. She thrust her staff and formed a huge water tornado that engulfed Arba. As I said, I'm stronger than you, Arba snorted and clasped her hands together. Suddenly, a small wind sphere appeared in front of her. The sphere continued to expand rapidly and turned into a tornado that blew the water away from her, creating a gap without water in this artificial sea. Arba used that chance to fly up, avoiding the tornado as she watched how the sea returned to normal. After that, Ilareka and Arba thought the same thing as they both raised their hands in unison. Ilareka formed 2 water tornadoes that rose to the sky, while Arba summoned 2 wind tornadoes to counter her. This clash created rain for them, as they seemed to have an endless supply of magic power to continue for a long time. Not wanting to waste her time, Arba flew down while gathering the wind around her foot. She kicked the water and dispersed the wind, creating another small gap through the water until she reached Ilareka. Ilareka tried to block her kick with her staff, but Arba's aim turned out to be her staff. She kicked that staff, launching her into the air. Then, she followed her and made the battlefield back in the air. After coming out of the water, Ilareka snapped her finger while looking at Arba, who also just left. A giant hand, made of water, rose and grasped her, trying to bring her back into the water. Arba gritted her teeth and spun her body, enhancing the wind around her body to create a small gale to break free from this water. Waterfall. Ilareka raised her staff as the elemental spurted the water inside his body to Arba. Tiesk. Arba used her wind to launch her away, barely avoiding the high-pressured water from the elemental. She returned to her original position while Ilareka clasped her hands. The elemental followed her movement and crushed Arba with both hands, but the latter managed to form a spherical wind barrier that ultimately created a hole in the elemental's hands. Looking at her arrogant eyes, Ilareka said, You're too arrogant. I will put you in your place." "That's something I should say, brat." Arba snorted. "I am older than you." Ilareka waved her staff down. "I am going to show you my real power." Suddenly, 2 more water elementals rose, surrounding Arba. "You won't get away from this." Ilareka squinted her eyes while releasing her killing intent, planning to kill Arba right now. Arba only smiled when he heard those words. This is why Greenhorn is bad. Her body was covered with the wind as she raised both hands. "I can't do it well, but I think I can make a small one." Suddenly, Ilareka raised her vision and saw the cloud on top of them begin to spin before forming a tornado. "What? Impossible! You can't create a natural disaster." Ilareka was shocked because the protectors were supposed to be the only ones who could create something like this. She hurriedly asked all elementals to hit Arba with their hands. Unfortunately, everything was too late. The tornado already reached them and engulfed Arba in the process. That was when she realized Arba covering her body with the wind was to make herself invulnerable against the mighty wind. and this tornado continued until it reached the surface of the water before expanding, devouring all the elementals, including her. Ilareka covered her body with a water sphere and barely avoided getting thrown away. She looked left and right, realizing none of her elementals survived. You! Ilareka gritted her teeth and observed the situation. They were inside the tornado that acted as a barrier to their surroundings. At the same time, she noticed there was no wind in this area. If you disrupt the tornado. She thought about an interesting thing, but Arba already knew about it and reappeared in front of Ilareka, hitting her face. I already know that, brat. Just go back. Arba punched her face without using her wind to avoid breaking the barrier apart. Still, her strength was enough to break her nose's bone and knock her back to the water. Chapter 594. Arba vs. Mermaid Princess Part 2. When she was about to touch the water, her body suddenly stopped as a mysterious power wrapped around her. What? Ilareka's eyes widened, and she turned to the side. Arba also noticed them as a tornado was interrupted and dispersed. Suddenly, a man covered in black metal flew across the water at high speed. His left hand hung uselessly at his side, but his right hand was raised above his head, poised to strike Ilareka. Ilareka struggled, managing to form a giant hand of water to stop him, but a hole suddenly appeared in it out of nowhere. She soon realized an arrow had pierced the hand, creating a gap for the man to pass through. She waved her staff and struck him, but the man had enough strength to push her back into the air. The water particles in the air suddenly began to gather around her as they covered her staff, creating a giant water spiral formed by her body's rotation. The wind gently wrapped Arba's hands as she struck Ilareka. Ha! Bam! The collision dispersed both the wind and water to the side while blowing Ilareka away. She spun a few times and used the water droplets to stop the momentum before everyone could continue attacking her. It was then she started looking around and recognizing all of them. You! Ilareka raised her head and found all top 10 fighters from their side had died. How? How did they die? You couldn't afford to kill them. Your strength wasn't supposed to be this strong. However, she soon found the reason when only 3 of them helped Arba in this fight. At the same time, Devane couldn't use his left hand. Felice was too tired to participate in the fight for a long time, and Tasha was covered with wounds. She realized they made a certain sacrifice to kill their top 10 fighters. After all, there was no Michelle, Sophia, Ayaka, and Rhea Ross, who was supposed to be the strongest among them. You! Ilareka gritted her teeth and shouted, You are shameless. You don't have the ability to kill me by yourself, and you call yourself the strongest humanity. Arba closed her eyes and smiled. As much as I want to rebuke your words, I don't need to. After all, you taught us this tactic. Wasn't your sea race who planned the fight between our king and 2 other protectors? And you are calling us shameless to fight you in this situation. This is why I don't like Greenhorn. This is a checkmate made by our king. All of them smiled when they heard the last sentence. They still remembered when Kai visited them for a brief moment, giving instruction to all of them. You talk too much. Tasha raised her hand, and a pink sphere appeared out of thin air. After that, she charged the sphere with her lightning before compressing it as her arrow. She aimed her arrow and shot her. Ilareka released the water droplet that let her stay afloat and started falling to avoid the arrow. Felice hurriedly raised her again with the telekinesis, but Ilareka dispersed the water droplets to stop the telekinesis. What? You can do that? Felice widened her eyes and soon figured out what had happened. Ilareka was using the water droplets to carry her magic power, dispersing the telekinesis. Unfortunately for her, Devane was floating above the water with Felice's help. Seeing Devane, Ilareka waved her hand, raising the water to form 2 giant hands. He was soon engulfed by the hands, while Arba took this chance to use her wind to redirect Tasha's arrow and increase its speed. The arrow flew faster than her, catching up to her. Ilareka blocked the arrow with her staff, but the lightning was released from its compressed form, electrocuting her. Ah! Ah! She screamed in pain and crashed into the water, losing her consciousness for 3 seconds. The moment she woke up, Ilareka looked around, finding something she could use. She hurriedly swam forward, using the water as her cover. Suddenly, she leaped from the water, and Felice was right in front of her eyes. I got you! Ilareka smirked. No, you! Felice waved her hand upward. boosting Ilarica's momentum to launch her to the sky. Go! What? Ilarica widened her eyes and hurriedly summoned 3 water elementals to help her. Unfortunately for her, Felice used her telekinesis to disperse the water. Devane created a giant metal fan and swung it to blow the elemental away, and Tasha's arrow sparked on the very bottom of the elemental, making the rest of its body lose the water supply. Without her elementals, Ilarica needed to face Arba alone. No! Ilarica tried to spin her body, but Felice stopped her movement before dropping to the ground due to exhaustion. There wasn't much magic power left in her body. Arba covered her fists with her wind power and sent both hands to hit her chest. Surprisingly, Arba caught her staff and used her wind to take it away. Wah! Ilarica dropped her jaw and saw Arba losing her momentum. This way, she couldn't do another attack. You won't be able to attack me again. Yeah, it's not me after all. Arba smiled. I am just an old woman. The youngsters should be the heroes, not me. Suddenly, a pink magic circle appeared next to her as Devane emerged from within. Ilarica soon realized Devane's aim was to kill her. Hence, she raised both hands, trying to protect her heart and head. However, Devane didn't care about them and struck her stomach. Despite her tough skin, Devane's metal hand pierced through her stomach. Ilarica coughed up blood and thought it was impossible for Devane to pierce her skin because it was strong enough to withstand his power in this situation. After all, they were still falling, and his punch would just boost her momentum. Suddenly, Felice dropped to the ground, struggling to get up. It turned out she used the remaining of her magic power to stop Ilarica for a second, allowing Devane's hand to pierce through her stomach. Impossible. Blood began to flow out of the hole and her mouth. Ilarica was unwilling to die without accomplishing anything, so she immediately grabbed Devane's hand, trying to bring him inside the water to drown him. Unfortunately for her, Tasha saw through her plan and appeared next to them while clapping her hands. Teleportation! No! Ilarica gasped as the scenery soon changed as they were teleported 500 meters above the ground. Arba only raised her head and muttered, You can't use your water droplets anymore because it uses too much of your magic power, and in that state, you have no other choice than to die. Still, Ilarica had her own pride, and her unwillingness gave her a bit of her strength. Even if I need to die, I am going to make you suffer. She raised both hands, trying to snap Devane's head, only to find it useless. Tasha's arrow pierced her right hand, and the compressed lightning sparked, obliterating her entire arm. Meanwhile, the other one could only grasp Devane's head and had no strength left to snap his neck. Devane hit her head with his head, cracking her skull. No. Ilarica was unwilling, but her consciousness had already left her body. Tasha used her teleportation to send them to the ground, letting Devane arrive on the land and create a small crater. Tasha and Arba surrounded them to make sure she had died. Chapter 5095, Kai vs. Neptune. Part 1. Meanwhile, in another place, Kai raised his swords while Neptune waved her staff. This battle was on a completely different level than any other fight on the other battlefield. Kai even teleported them to Argentina, far away from the current battlefield. He wanted to avoid the worst-case scenario after all. You have prepared to die. Neptune squinted his eyes. He was right. Before leaving, Kai already asked Arba to bring his family members to Amulda Kalan and hide until the next opportunity came. Without space magic, Neptune had no power to go back to the battlefield to kill them yet. That was why it was a good time to flee, even if Arba needed to use her force to bring them away. Still, Kai never had the intention to throw away his life in this battle. He took a deep breath and answered, That's a different case. I have no plan in dying. The feeling is mutual. Neptune faced Kai with a solemn expression. I would have never thought that you could become this strong within such a short amount of time, just like Gilgamesh. I guess this is a feature only humans can have. I don't really care about what you're talking about. Kai waved his sword as the sound wave traveled from his sword to Neptune. Neptune struck the sound wave and redirected it to the ground before finding a colossal and deep sword mark on the ground after impact. Since Kai had attacked him, Neptune obviously had no plan in wasting his time anymore. Rain! Neptune raised his staff as the cloud began to turn dark and gather in their area. Kai harumphed and tossed his jewel to the sky, trying to blow away the cloud. However, Neptune disappeared and his crown jewel returned to his hand. Kai raised his head and found Neptune above him. Then, rain began to pour down and became a deadly weapon for Neptune. A huge green-colored magic circle suddenly appeared in the sky, generating a low-power sound wave that was only enough to stop the rain. Neptune, on the contrary, redirected the water to form a huge spear that struck the magic circle, shattering it. Kai then tossed his jewel again. When Neptune was about to hit it, a pink magic circle transported the crown jewel to the sky, pushing all the clouds around the area, making sure no rain happened. Again, Neptune had predicted something like this. Hence, he spread the rain. Using the water that just wet the ground, he formed multiple water spears, launching them to Kai in order to impale him. Kai's expression hadn't changed as he moved forward, heading straight to one of the spears. His sword cut through the water and split the spear into two before Neptune appeared behind him, waving his staff. Water! Sono, Kai spun his body while Neptune struck him. Their weapons collided with each other as water began to disperse in Neptune's direction, while a shockwave pushed Kai back. Kai took a few steps back before grabbing the pebble on the ground. He then threw it while boosting its speed with his magic. Neptune caught the small pebble and turned it into dust, showing his extraordinary skin. Kai squinted his eyes and grabbed his crown jewel, holding it together with his sword. Sonokinetic blade. The sound wave produced by his sword was amplified by at least 20 folds, creating an attack at an unprecedented level. All buildings, trees, and ruins were cut horizontally as they soon got blown away by the shockwave produced a bit later after the swing. In one swing, Kai created a flat land within a 1-kilometer radius. Even Neptune needed to avoid that attack, as he didn't wish to unnecessarily use his power to contain that kind of attack. Still, he could understand why Kai became a protector. As if not wanting to be outdone, Neptune raised his hand. Hearing the movement from the ground, Kai leaped into the air and saw cracks appearing on the ground, letting the groundwater flow out to the surface. You think you can defeat me on land? Water is all over the area. Neptune harumphed. But you can't manipulate the water in my body. Kai smirked. Neptune's expression turned serious. Then, I will shove all this water inside your body, Neptune snorted. Suddenly, the brown-colored water rose and transformed into hundreds of weapons, from swords to maces. Kai hurriedly jumped to the side while creating his oscillation shield to protect himself from the onslaught. At the same time, the weapons chasing him from behind met his sonokinetic blade, which he dispersed to create a fan-shaped sound wave that obliterated them. After that, another magic circle appeared beneath Kai's feet and sent him behind Neptune. Neptune widened his eyes and hurriedly waved his staff, blocking Kai's attack. However, Kai's swords vibrated even stronger and produced a sonic boom, boosting his power and ultimately knocking him away. While flying, Neptune clutched his hand as the water rose from one side. Kai turned around and found a huge wave reaching over 80 meters in height. Oh, wow! Kai was impressed when he saw Neptune creating a tsunami with only groundwater. He then slashed his sword horizontally, splitting the wave into two. But this was where Neptune showcased his skills. The upper wave formed 100 weapons, while the bottom part carried the energy, turning the groundwater into a raging deep sea during the storm, trying to make Kai uncomfortable. Kai tossed his jewel to the weapon and dispersed the weapons, while Neptune used this chance to point his staff toward Kai's back. His blue-colored crown jewel responded by infusing its power to create a raging water tornado. This one couldn't be compared to the one Ilarica used. Instead of spinning in one direction, it moved in all directions in that enclosed space. Anyone devoured by this wave wouldn't know where he should head, because he would be spinning like crazy. Kai clicked his tongue and summoned his oscillation shield to block the water. However, Neptune played another trick when a dragon head rose from the water and devoured him. Annoying, Kai's crown jewel returned to him and remained floating on top of him. It then generated the sound wave that blew the water away, ultimately destroying the dragon's head. But Neptune's water tornado managed to withstand that powerful shock wave. Kai furrowed his eyebrows. As expected from a protector, I guess. He slashed the tornado diagonally, using his sonokinetic blade. The sound wave cut through the tornado and continued to head toward Neptune. Unfortunately, Neptune had recovered and stood above the water. Instead of moving away, he formed another water spear with the same ragging current like the tornado and sent it to the sonokinetic blade. The two collided. The water was blown back while the wind pushed everything behind the sonokinetic blade backward. Neptune took that chance to devour both of them by summoning another dragon head from the water, suppressing both of their attacks. This is good. Neptune smiled confidently. Even though Kai was strong, he still couldn't see himself defeated by Kai. On the other hand, Kai was curious about something. He asked with a poker face, "If you have this much power, why don't you just challenge King Gilgamesh with your strength instead of relying on cheap tricks?" Obviously, Neptune took it personally and waved his hand, creating a crescent-shaped water wave that ran on the surface of the water. There is no need to answer your question. Chapter 596, Kai vs. Neptune Part 2, Shameless King. Kai chuckled, mocking him. Neptune raised his hand and created an even raging wave that splashed toward Kai. All the water that hit him would turn into a sharp object that could pierce his body. Hence, Kai surrounded himself with his oscillation shield, blowing all the water away. Neptune then disappeared, swimming inside the muddy water. Although it looked like he didn't like it, Neptune indeed managed to cover himself using this water. If not because of the protector's extraordinary hearing, Kai might not be able to find him. The moment Neptune appeared, the water rose and formed a pillar to surround Kai. Unfortunately for him, Kai had already prepared for his attack and used his teleportation magic to send him not far away from Neptune. Sonokinetic blade. Kai then waved his hand and cut the water pillar, revealing Neptune's appearance. He was leaning to the back and almost flipped to avoid that attack. However, a huge shark head emerged from the water, devouring Kai. The latter even needed to use his sound blast to launch him to the outside. Because of the current, he ended up going in Neptune's direction, allowing him to gain the advantage. Neptune used that chance to appear on top of his head, slamming his staff. Kai waved both swords in two directions, trying to scare Neptune away. The right sword aimed at the fishtail, while the other sword stopped his staff. As if seeing through this plan, Neptune shifted his body to the side, barely avoiding Kai. But a small part of his fishtail was still cut by Kai's sword. In return, Neptune let go of his staff for a second and punched Kai's stomach. Gah! Kai spat a mouthful of blood as he fell to the water. Neptune quickly followed him, because he could gain a massive advantage in this water, albeit Kai was better than he expected. Right before hitting the water, Kai managed to stop himself and used his sound blast to keep him floating. He obviously summoned another head to devour him, but Kai used his crown jewel to create a powerful shockwave to disperse all the water around him. Neptune used that water to form a spherical roof to trap Kai, while forming a huge spear that was going to pierce through both the roof and Kai. The latter hurriedly teleported to the side, avoiding the spear. Neptune waved his spear and formed the water tornado, but Kai clenched his fist and punched forward, generating the shockwave at the same level as the attack he used to kill one of the top fighters from the enemy side. The two clashed and both of them neutralized each other. Kai used another teleportation magic to send him to Neptune's side. Clink! Neptune's staff and Kai's sword collided again, as both of them wanted to see who had more power. Unfortunately, none of them moved. Seeing there was no improvement, Neptune controlled his water again, while Kai used the crown jewel to disperse the water. Neptune's crown jewel began to shine, as it lifted all the water in the area to form a huge cylindrical barrier that reached the sky. The water began to form all sorts of weapons, trying to kill Kai. However, another teleportation magic sent them out of the water pillar. After that, Kai let go of his right sword and clenched his fists. He grabbed the crown jewel and hit Neptune on the cheek. Surprisingly, Neptune also did the same thing, and hit Kai on the same spot. There was an oscillation shield on Kai's cheek, while Neptune also protected himself with the small droplet that seemed to be his spit. However, the conclusion came suddenly. Kai's magic circle broke, and the spit lost its power at the same time, resulting in both of them hitting each other. Most of the power might have been lost, but their strength was still enough to blow them away. Kai gritted his teeth and glared at Neptune, whose cheek was swollen. "You're not strong." Neptune snorted and looked at Kai, who had the same condition. "You're too weak." Kai and Neptune realized that they needed to somehow outsmart the other party to deal some damage. If not, this battle would be dragged for a few hours, if not days. To do that, Neptune hurriedly dove down inside the water, while Kai countered it by teleporting right above the water. He punched the water with all his strength, dispersing all the water to find Neptune. Kuh! Neptune clicked his tongue and raised his staff, blocking Kai's punch. Unfortunately, the punch was much stronger than he expected and pushed him to the ground and turned the flatland into a small lake. Tisk! Neptune tried to control his water, but none of them could push back Kai's powerful shockwave. In order to fight back, Neptune controlled the water from farther away and summoned a huge elemental that extended their hand to Kai. Kai realized he couldn't hit him and retreated using his sound blast before cutting the elemental into two. After that, Neptune arrived in front of him with water spinning around his hand. Kai raised both hands to block that punch, but the water quickly enveloped his hands, tying him up. Kai widened his eyes as a punch landed on his chest. Kai endured the pain as he heard the bone crack. Neptune then launched him away before excruciating pain ran through his entire body. His body also flew in a different direction as he coughed blood. He realized Kai kicked him at the last second, breaking 2 ribs. He gritted his teeth, realizing he might not be able to kill Kai unscathed. However, the one thing that was definitely unscathed was none other than the land. Kai just turned this beautiful place into a flatland, then to a lake in this battle, while Neptune filled the water. Luckily, most of their clashes occurred in the air, as they might end up changing the landscape of their surroundings as well. Both of them hurriedly regained their composure and charged forward. Their sword and staff clashed again and split the water below them. Neptune summoned another head to swallow Kai, but the latter changed his grip and made a circular slash that cut everything. Even Neptune needed to lower his staff to block it. After that, Kai grabbed his sword with his mouth and swung it toward Neptune. Neptune effortlessly blocked it, but he knew the real attack was coming from the punch that hit him in the chest. Neptune spat a mouthful of blood. Before getting blown away, he managed to pierce the side of Kai's chest with his staff, missing his heart. Cage. Neptune flew away with regret as 3 more ribs were broken. The pain was already spread all over his body, so he needed to end this soon. Even after defeating Kai, he might need some time to recover. Kai, on the other hand, tried to cover his wound to stop the bleeding by wrapping his sleeve to cover the area while pushing it with his sound blast. Neptune looked at Kai's state and said, "You're truly dangerous. You're prepared to die and will do anything to kill me. I thought you were going to fight conservatively. Tell me, if I fight you like that, can I win?" Kai snorted. "No." Neptune smirked. They both were heavily injured, but none of them showed any weakness. After a few seconds, they started clashing again. Chapter 597, Kai vs. Neptune Part 3. Haha! Kai panted as his body was covered in superficial wounds. Neptune also had the same condition. Both of them were trying to outsmart each other in this fight. Kai had the superiority in mind, but Neptune was stronger. The latter managed to stop a few of Kai's attempts, resulting in them being in the same condition. They had been clashing for around 30 minutes. Their bodies also started to give up after these many wounds and blood loss. Neptune gritted his teeth and moved forward, not giving Kai any time to breathe. Kai also shared the same sentiment. Sonokinetic Blade. Kai released a sonic wave to Neptune. Instead of blocking it like with his physical ability, Neptune summoned another head to devour it. His body couldn't handle that kind of power anymore, even though he hadn't even used half of his magic power. Crown Jewel's supply of magic power was close to infinite after all. "Move!" Kai shouted, raising his own morale to continue fighting. Ha! Neptune thrust his spear, forming another water tornado. Kai also punched the air and formed a similar one with his sonic wave, neutralizing the tornado. He then appeared behind Neptune by using his teleportation and waving his sword. Sonokinetic Blade. Water Sphere. Neptune formed a small ball of water that engulfed Kai's attack. After that, Kai closed his right eye for a split second as the water turned into a spike and pierced his foot. Kuh! Neptune clenched his fist and struck Kai on the chest while the latter stabbed his stomach. Gah! Both of them coughed blood and remained strong. However, Neptune still had thicker skin and a stronger body. He blew Kai away with his strength, destroying a few ribs. Haha. Neptune panted a few times, looking at Kai's eyes which seemed to begin losing their focus. You won't be able to defeat me, said Neptune, though I applaud you for reaching this far. With this kind of injury, you can buy enough time for your wives to hide far away from me. I admit that I will need at least 1 year to recover from this injury, and some parts can't simply be recovered. Buying time? That is a term after I lose against you. Kai harumphed. Just take a look at yourself. You're closer to your physical limit than me. You're going down sooner than me. Neptune snorted. That is something I decided. If it's to kill you, I can fight even when I'm unconscious. I applaud your attitude, especially coming from someone who just became a protector. I, Neptune, acknowledge you as my equal. Even if you die, I promise I will bury you and regard you as my greatest rival. No one will look down upon your corpse. Neptune raised his hand, saying with a full conviction, Unfortunately, if I kill you here, you will die without a burial ground. I may not be able to invade the sea, but I will make them suffer because of your decision and this grudge that has gone through generations. Kai shook his head. Fine by me. After all, I will kill every single human I can find, making sure your race extinct. Neptune snorted. Extinction. Huh. How many times has humanity gone to the brink of extinction? Yet, we have survived every single time, adapting to the situation. No matter what, your goal can't be achieved. Humans will survive even 1,000 years from now on. Kai smiled. We will see whose vision is true. Neptune raised his staff. With both of them reaching their physical limit, Kai did something unexpected. He made sure the crown jewels stayed in front of him as Kai concentrated, gathering all his power into his sword. After taking a few deep breaths, Kai waved his sword down. Sonokinetic blade. You're insane! Neptune shouted and drew a gasp when he saw Kai stroking his own crown jewel. Do you know what you're doing? Kai remained silent and hit it with all the power he had while crushing it with his own sound wave. Clink. A shard, 1/100th of its original size, snapped. It was at this time Kai's intention became clear. Are you trying to create a mini-apocalypse? Neptune's expression turned grim. This mini-apocalypse had happened a few times in the past. They were not strong enough to influence the entire world, but it was enough to destroy a civilization, like the Maya tribe or any advanced ancient civilizations. And Kai seemed to be planning to use this power to kill him. However, Neptune thought of something else. This was a chance. He hurriedly charged forward while waving his staff. Even with a mini-apocalypse, you need your own altar to do that. I have checked the water and found nothing wrong. Kai furrowed his eyebrows and tried to grab both the crown jewel and its shard, utilizing them together. Wait, no, you're going to use it together? Neptune opened his mouth in shock. He struck both swords together and soon realized the one with the smaller shard was weaker than the one with the crown jewel. At the same time, now that the crown jewel lost a portion of its power, their strength wasn't equal anymore. He shifted his spear to the side, pushing the weaker sword before striking the stronger one with all his strength, knocking Kai's sword away. This is it. I thought you were going to use it to create a small apocalypse, but I guess you're not at that level yet. Neptune smirked as he used this chance to pierce Kai's stomach with his staff. Gah! Kai spat a mouthful of blood as the staff pierced through him. I am going to flood your body with water. Neptune smirked, but that expression didn't last for long. Kai grasped Neptune's wrist with his right hand and locked it, so he didn't pull out. He smiled. I got you. Neptune widened his eyes as he thought, what is he planning to do? No matter what, I can channel my magic power into my staff and flood his organs with water. This way, it will surely kill him. However, that thought disappeared when Kai raised his other hand. The long sleeve was ripped apart as patterns started shining on his hand. Wait, what's that? Neptune recognized the pattern because it was a very important pattern, the altar's magic circle. Kai made a big smile as he clenched his fists, holding the small shard of his crown jewel. Goodbye, Neptune. In that split second, Neptune understood what was going on. Just like the crown jewel, the altar could also be shattered into pieces. Kai used the same amount of power to chip away a bit of the altar and planted that shard in his own hand, hiding it underneath his flesh. Now that he had the altar, the magic circle, and the shard, everything was already aligned for him to create a small apocalypse. That was also why Kai said goodbye to Neptune. You. Before he finished his words, Kai's fist hit him on the face. A loud sound then erupted, like that of a volcano's eruption. There was once a record that Krakatoa's eruption could be heard from thousands of kilometers away, and Kai just replicated that power to kill Neptune. The shock wave it produced was far beyond his imagination, as it surpassed that of an atomic blast. Kai used all his magic power to protect himself and flew away. Boom. Chapter 598. War on the Other Battlefield. Arba and Tasha continued to kill more and more magical beasts, while Devane needed to get healed first before helping them. Although Leah didn't stand out, she was one of the most important people in this war. Not only did she carry all the injured people to the medical teams, but she also helped Aston control the battlefield. Aston had indeed done a great job. He managed to move the entire troops while making sure no one bothered their top fighters. The soldiers had also moved according to his directions and killed many enemies. His arrangement might not be as good as Kai's, but it was more accurate than Nathan, who couldn't see the battlefield with his own eyes. Of course, the soldiers also did so many things on the battlefield, turning the war in their favor. A few generals had also died due to the sea creatures, but they managed to deal with them. Tanks and fighter jets had been deployed and kept hitting all those monsters, flattening them. The magical beasts also fought back and sank many of them while killing tens of thousands of soldiers. Still, this was the terror of the war. People were dying. Some managed to live, but experienced heavy injuries and some trauma that would continue for years after their recovery. Blood dyed the hill red and created a blood river. Body parts from either humans or sea creatures were scattered around the battlefield. However, they needed to push forward and keep fighting until one side lost. This was a cruel war without an option to surrender. It was either you died or you won. Before the fight, the soldiers had been briefed on the scale of this war, but when they experienced it themselves, all of them thought the same thing. This is hell. Despite seeing their comrades dying before their eyes, the group continued to push forward and kept fighting. They could only see Michelle and the others from afar and realize how small they could do on this battlefield. Even then, they wished to contribute, especially knowing that Kai was fighting a terrifying monster that could create a sharp rain that could massacre hundreds of thousands, if not millions, just by letting that rain continue for a few minutes. No matter how small they could do, they would contribute. The veterans, youngsters, and other people who had a heart movement from seeing the battlefield arrived on the battlefield one after another from the closest area. The war had brought many changes: Rapaka's sacrifice, flying magical beasts' help, and many others. No one knew what would happen to this land as well, especially the new man-made hill. Suddenly, a huge magic circle appeared on the battlefield, stunning all of them. But they all knew who was about to come out of this magic circle, because Kai was the only one who would come to this place with that kind of magic. Sophia and Ayaka wanted to head there immediately, but their bodies couldn't move due to their injuries. Michelle, Felice, Ria, Haruko all wanted to meet him as they struggled to reach there with their current state. Tasha, Arba, Devane stopped for a moment to greet Kai. However, they all dropped their jaws to the ground when they saw his state. The entire world turned silent, including those who could only look through the screen. Kai emerged from the magic circle, but his whole body was covered with wounds and blood. His vision would have turned red as blood had covered it. His entire left arm and his right foot to the knee had gone with fresh blood continuously dripping to the ground. His body kept swaying left and right as he could barely walk, due to the support of his right hand, holding the sword like that of a stick. There were many wounds in his body that made it even worse, such as some sharp objects that pierced through his skin and some holes that almost allowed them to see his bones. Without hesitation, Leah teleported her and Evan to his side while shouting, "Evan!" Evan's heart skipped a beat when he saw Kai's state. Despite having seen so many injuries, this was the first time he saw someone still alive after suffering these many injuries. Why, yes. Evan hurriedly covered Kai's body with his healing water, trying to heal him as soon as possible. He wouldn't let him die. Michelle, Felice, Haruko, Ria, and Tasha hurriedly appeared by his side. "Kai, master!" They dropped to their knees with tears streaming down their cheeks. They couldn't imagine what had happened on the other battlefield. Arba clenched her fist and gnashed her teeth. The only one who knew what happened was her. After all, she was the one that planted the altar inside his arm. Abba refused to do it at first, but Kai ultimately persuaded her. Michelle wanted to grab his hand but didn't wish to interrupt Evan's magic, so she could only sit on her knees looking at Kai. To their surprise, Kai still said 2 words about his injury: "We won." He had no more energy to call their names anymore, but his will to live still remained, keeping his consciousness awake despite closing his eyes. And those 2 words stabbed their hearts. Michelle's hands joined together, fighting that pain from seeing Kai in this state. She gritted her teeth and called those who could still fight: Tasha, Abba, Devane. With anger in her eyes and tears streaming down her cheeks, she glared at them. Leave no one alive. These 3 wreaked havoc before the roar of victory shook their battlefield. Boom! The sound came from the south like the distant roar of heavy guns. They didn't find an explosion that big anywhere on the battlefield, but that noise forced them to get on their knees and cover their ears. What is that sound? Where? Looking at a smile that appeared on Kai's face, Michelle endured the pain from the sound and stared at the sky, muttering, "It's the drum of victory." Chapter 59. Post-war 4 months later. In South Carolina, near Rapa Nui Hill, stood tall a colossal building. There was a sign on top of it saying, "Great War Museum." A middle-aged man was walking inside the museum with a 7-year-old boy who was looking around with great curiosity. Suddenly, they stopped upon a picture. It was a picture of Argentina's newest lake. The lake had a size of 1,000 square kilometers. "Father, why is there a lake here?" "I don't think it's irrelevant." The boy furrowed his eyebrows, staring at his father. "Haha, you're wrong. This is called Katoon Lake. Its name derived from the fight between Kai Carter and Neptune. According to the story, Kai Carter was the one who created that lake." "What? A lake this big? Can someone do that?" The boy opened his mouth in surprise. "Ho ho, of course. Kai Carter is the strongest person in the world. Back then, he fought humanity's greatest enemy, Neptune. I participated in that fight from the very start. I saw how Neptune called forth a tsunami and flooded the entire South Carolina. He could even massacre humanity at an unprecedented level with just a wave of his staff. Even so, everything changed when Kai Carter arrived. He repelled the rain and dispersed the cloud by using single magic. After that, he carried Neptune to Argentina, so he didn't injure any other people. In that battle, Kai Carter could create a flatland in a 1-mile radius with a swing of his sword. And to kill Neptune, he created a punch that could be categorized as one of the worst natural disasters. That punch was at the scale of a supervolcano eruption. The sound traveled thousands of miles away and created a crater this big, which later turned into a lake. "The sound," the kid gasped and said. "Was the sound?" "Yeah, it was the sound you heard back then." The sound even traveled across the sea and reached United Asia and EU base a few hours later. Back then, I was too shocked because before the sound reached the battlefield, Kai had returned triumph. However, he also suffered a heavy injury at that time. He pointed at Kai's statue next to them. "Look at his foot and left arm. That only reflects a small portion of his injury. Father, he is so cool." The boy's eyes brightened. Of course, he's not called the hero for nothing. The battle's recordings are for everyone to see. The girls have become the role models for many people who wish to get stronger in the academy or military. He smiled. "I also want to be like them." "Haha." The father patted his son's head with a gentle smile. "Work hard. I believe you can do it." "Yes." He nodded furiously before a certain question appeared in his mind. "That's right. Where is he?" The father contemplated while looking at the ceiling. "He is rumored to get married right now, but no one knew about its details. From the rumors, Kai Carter doesn't like to get his private life invaded, so not many people can attend it, though I believe generals, his close friends and family are there. This is why I bring you here to learn all this. I would like to pay respect for the sacrifice he has made to repel the enemies, along with all other fallen soldiers." He smiled. As he said, Kai was holding his marriage this time. After a long period of recovery, Kai was finally ready to marry his girls. Michelle became the clingiest one that stuck to him most of the time after seeing his injuries. She took care of him, making sure he could recover despite having no right foot and left arm. To fix his body, Rhea and Felice collaborated with each other, trying to make prosthetic limbs that could feel like the real hand and could function the same like his right hand. On the other hand, Ayaka and Haruko worked together in planning everything about their marriages. They made sure everything went smoothly, from the party to the dress. Surprisingly, Kai also accepted Leah as his wife. She had been part of the family since a year ago and became busy taking care of her parents and settled all sorts of business they had. Sophia handled all sorts of interviews about Kai's condition and his life. In other words, she was Carter family's spokesperson. Meanwhile, Tasha continued being with their parents because they broke apart when they saw Kai's injuries on the battlefield. They always blamed themselves, even though the condition wasn't related to them. She was there until everything returned to normal. Finally, after a long recovery process and preparation, Kai held their marriage. From the US base, they sent President Brent and a few generals that Kai had seen, like Ethan, Jose, and Paolo. From the EU base, Marcia and Rosalind came and congratulated him for his marriage. United Asia also sent their prime minister and the South family's representative to congratulate him. Of course, the Yajima family and the Campbell family also visited the US base. They finally met with the rest of the families, such as the Graham family, the Kudo family, and Arba, who became Leah's guardian. Surprisingly, there was a certain table that gave off a weird feeling. That table had Ayaka's grandfather, Sophia's grandfather, Michele's grandfather, and Kai's father. They talked like they had been friends for more than 10 years. Still, compared to Kai's status as a hero, there were only a total of 100 people attending this marriage. It might be small, but it was certainly the most important marriage in the world. After that marriage, Kai and his family mysteriously disappeared from the world's eyes, not wanting to get their private life invaded. And none of the world leaders mentioned anything about Kai's whereabouts. Kai's name then resounded across the world for a long time. His mysterious disappearance elevated his status even further as he became a global role model. All three bases only said, "When the world needs a hero, he will appear." Chapter 600, 5 years END, 5 years later. Inside Rhea's laboratory, Kai was standing while holding a soft metal arm that had been covered with a layer of skin similar to his original skin. "How is it?" Rhea smiled. "This is the newest product. You can easily control it because it matches your brainwave and muscle." "I did the brainwave." Felice walked to him and gave a thumbs up. A smile appeared on her poker face. "Also, this arm will." Before she finished her words, two kids, a boy and a girl, stormed the room, running toward Kai. They all jumped to him, trying to get into his embrace. Kai immediately reacted and caught them both in his arms. "Yay! Papa has a better arm now." The boy had black hair that looked like his. However, he had deep blue eyes, resembling Michelle. The girl had long brown hair tied into a ponytail. She cheerfully raised her hand when she felt the smoothness of Kai's new arm. "Yay! I get to try Papa's new hand this time." "Haha, Ben, Nadia. You two shouldn't interrupt someone talking. Look." Kai moved his body so they both could see Felice's pouting expression. Surprisingly, another boy walked to her while nudging Felice's white coat. He had short gray hair like Rhea, but he was Kai and Sophia's child. They didn't know why, but he seemed to be fond of Felice from a young age, resulting in a deep relationship between her and Sophia. "You should say something, you know." Sophia suddenly appeared behind him while encouraging him. "Don't be shy, Harry." Harry looked down before gently nodding his head. Sophia then turned to Ben and Nadia and said, "You two, your mothers are searching for you." "Ah!" Ben and Nadia gasped, but before they could move, Michelle and Ayaka had already appeared. "Found you." Michelle's voice resounded in Ben's ears as she arrived in front of Ben. "You haven't done your homework." "No!" Ben shouted, but Michelle grasped him and lifted him up. "Come on, I will be accompanying you and teaching you everything." Michelle shook her head helplessly. "You already promised me, Papa." Ben extended his hand, asking Kai's help. "Ben, you need to do your homework." Nadia chuckled. "Yeah, and you say you want to help me make breakfast for your father?" Ayaka squinted her eyes as she appeared next to Nadia. Nadia was afraid to turn around, but Ayaka had already poked her fat cheek. "Oh, so Nadia wants to make Papa breakfast. Papa is happy." Kai smiled. "Why, yes." Nadia finally surrendered and looked at her mother. "Let's go, Mama." Ayaka ultimately smiled as she held Nadia's hand, walking to the kitchen. On the way, they met 4 people. They were Haruko and Leah and their kids. Haruko gave birth to a girl with red hair. Surprisingly, she reminded Kai the first time she met Haruko, who happened to introduce herself as Sakura that time. She looked at Ayaka and said, "Mom, I want to learn how to use fire magic." Ayaka made a weird smile and pointed at Haruko behind him. "Vaya? You can ask your mother, you know." "Nah, Mum sucks. Gay?" Haruko's body shook as she stepped back. "I'm not." Bia stuck her tongue out. Meanwhile, the other girl came to Nadia while chuckling. "Hoo-hoo, I have told you to wait a bit. Now you got caught." "What do you mean I got caught?" Nadia pouted before admitting proudly. "This is tactical surrender. Don't be like that, Emily." Leah smiled and gently reprimanded her. Before they solved their problem, a pink magic circle appeared. A black-haired boy suddenly emerged from the magic circle, running toward Kai. "Papa, I'm back!" Another magic circle then followed him, as Tasha was chasing him while carrying a bag full of meat. "Jack, how many times have I told you not to use teleportation inside the house? You can hurt others." Both of them just came back from the supermarket, buying some meat to eat later. Jack ignored her and leaped to Kai's embrace. "Easy, buddy." Kai smiled and caught him. They were the Carter family. Kai couldn't help but smile, realizing why his parents could support him 100% when he was a kid. He himself felt he could overturn the world for his kids. To everyone's surprise, they seemed to have an uninvited guest. He had black hair and a long horn on top of his head. He wore a black-colored yukata and big round glasses. Leah, Ayaka, and Haruko instantly noticed him when he walked past them and recognized his face. "You!" Leah gasped. The man smiled and waved his hand. "Hello, hello. Congratulations on your marriage and children. Sorry that I can't meet you at that time." Kai already heard him coming and looked at his face, smiling. "This is surprising. I would never expect you to visit me." "Indeed, I wouldn't have come here if not because of that old hag," he chuckled. Suddenly, Jack walked toward him, stopping him from meeting his dad. "Who are you, mister?" "I am Jack, Papa's bodyguard." "Is that so?" He smiled and bent his knees, raising Jack up and letting him sit on his arm. "I am your dad's old friend. You can call me Uncle Ishii." "Uncle Ishii?" Jack widened his eyes before smirking. "Then, does Uncle have a present?" Ishii stopped for a second, shocked by Jack's words. He couldn't help but chuckle and look at him. "You are more shameless than your dad here. Superior gene." Jack proudly admitted it, inviting another wave of laughter from Ishii. "Ha ha ha, I like you. Uncle will prepare your gift then. I am looking forward to it." Ishii bent down and let Jack go before falling silent. Seeing his expression, Kai smiled and asked, "Jack, can you help your mother prepare the meat first?" Although unwilling, Tasha carried him out of the room. Felice and Ria also understood the importance of the matter. There was no way a protector would come here without any apparent reasons. After everyone left, Kai used his sound insulation magic. "I guess it's something important." "Yeah." Ishii nodded and remembered when the Whale Queen visited him before the war. "Your war seems to be bringing something big." "Something big? Another protector?" Kai narrowed his eyes. "I don't like to go to war anymore." "Well, I don't think we have a choice here." Ishii shook his head. "We?" Kai raised his eyebrows, understanding the importance of this matter. Multiple protectors? Little did they know, when they were talking, big things were happening all around the world. In Russia, a vast black cloud was raining a thunderstorm as a white snake tried to lift his body up to the sky. "Sha!" the white snake screamed. In Congo, specifically inside the burning magma of Mount Nyamuragira, a bright red shone brighter than the magma. A creature suddenly popped out of the magma and perched on the side of the volcano, spreading its wings. The creature was that of a bird made of fire. Its height reached as far as 100 meters, and its wingspan was even bigger. It let out an earth-shattering cry. Another creature also emerged from underneath the sand in the Sahara Desert. It was a giant scorpion. The scorpion shook its body left and right to throw off the sand covering his body, revealing his brown shell. He looked at the sky before a huge sand tornado appeared, reaching the sky. Similar sand also concealed another creature. However, it was underneath the Pacific Ocean. It revealed its body for the first time after a few thousand years. It had the body like that of an eel, but its size was comparable to that of Whale Queen. Lightning began to cover his whole body as he washed away all the sand with the seawater. Meanwhile, Ishi replied to Kai's question with a deep voice. Have you ever heard the Age of the Gods? The end.